the steal. Gillis in the open floor is going to have to regather to Smith. The lob to Edey.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
Approaching 14 minutes to go here at Baylor. On a shot, yeah, on target.
365 Sports is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
Harris finds a cutting Grady Dick. Blocked. Wilson is there to clean it up.
365 Sports is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
5 seconds. Shed driving. Looking up. 1 second to go for the win. He got it. The Cougars win it. Number one remains number one.
Have you subscribed to our YouTube channel? Search 365 Sports on YouTube. Brought to you by TFNB, your bank for life.
Burley tries again.
That's good. And Alabama feeling a lot better about their shooting now than at this point yesterday.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
We now know the NCAA tournament bracket. It was released yesterday evening. The Big 12 had 7 teams get in. Texas did everything they could possibly do to get themselves in that conversation for a number 1 overall seed, but that seemed to have been blocked out. Kansas, a number 1 seed. Baylor's a 3 seed. Kansas State's a 4 seed. And then Iowa State and West Virginia and also TCU very much a part of the conversation. Ought to be interesting to hear about it. We have our link. Paul, you want to put that up again?
Sure.
In the chat room, or how they can pin it. The link to join 365 Sports in our tournament bracket, and we'll just have fun with it if we possibly can. One note about basketball today is most of the discussion is about the tournament itself, and it will be with us and perhaps you. Yes, the Chris Beard story at Ole Miss now official, but today the transfer portal opened up. And if you think the transfer portal in football's busy, I can't even imagine when you have 363 teams in Division I, how busy that will be, and I've already seen some of the names who have entered the transfer portal. But, all right, Craig Smoak, Paul Catalina, was there anything in your opinion that was controversial, shocking, from the way that the bracket was released yesterday by the NCAA?
I mean, there are several things that stood out to me. For example, quad 1 losses really, if you had a lot of them stack up on you, the rest of your wins didn't really matter. And that goes true for North Carolina, who finished in the middle of the pack in the ACC and had 3 more quad 1 wins and just even traded them out for a couple of lesser losses. They might be in the tournament because they'd have beaten somebody good, but they're not in the tournament because they had 1 or 2 quad 1 wins the whole year long. But on the other hand of that, the Big 12 in the middle did all right, where they kind of respected the conference with the quad 1 wins. But at the top, they didn't change anything that they had 3 weeks ago. And, so Kansas having 17 quad 1 wins to Houston's 9 didn't mean a hill of beans when it came to overall seeds, but they're still a number 1, so I don't think it matters that much. But
one of the things they said about Houston was they didn't have as many quad 1 wins. They didn't play as many quad 1 games, and that their overall winning percentage in their quad 1 games was better than Kansas, and I'm not sure. But obviously, Kansas could have had something to do. Kansas, my God, they were beaten badly in Austin, and they got hammered in Kansas City to close out the week.
Yeah, if those are flipped, if they beat Texas twice, then they might be the overall number 1, because then you can't say anything about anything that's happened to anybody else in that league. It's look, they just beat Texas 2 times badly in the last week, which is why Texas, I think, solidified their spot with a great close to the season.
Oklahoma State did not get in. They were right there on the bubble. We knew that, but they did not. They didn't get that 1 extra win, that quad 1 win. They had many opportunities, but not enough. Maybe the NCAA just hates Oklahoma State because of the ruling a year ago, and then also the decision over the weekend. Craig?
Yeah, I mean, I guess when it comes to the Big 12, there was some thought about, Kansas being the top of the Midwest region, I guess, and instead they decided to go a different route than that. So, Houston gets that spot, but I guess outside of that, really the most complaining I've seen was Texas A&M and their spot as far as the seeds go, that they got a little bit of a screw job there. You know, some of that may relate back to last year. You know, if you read Joe Lunardi saying that they complained so openly about missing out last year that the committee's like, all right, well, we'll give you a little something right back. You know, also their non-conference schedule could be pointed to as well, so kind of a double set of reasons for why A&M might have had the seeding that they did, but I know that they're very outwardly vocal about not being happy about, you know, where they are and what they should have received instead. And also, of course, now all the talk is not about their first-round game, but about their second-round game against Texas if it works out that way. So, yeah, I mean, that Midwest region for KU and then, you know, A&M and their seeding were probably the two things I saw the most of, which makes sense given my timeline. Being in Texas and talking Big 12, like that's going to be probably most of what somebody like me would see. But I know there was a lot of other discussion out there, and it was fun to just see, you know, the unveiling. It's a special deal, you know, whether you're upset or not when it goes down, whether your team's on the edge and doesn't make it in or on the edge and gets in. There's two polar opposite feelings obviously there, but there's a lot of other, you know, where'd you end up and, hey, let's scout our path and how far can we go, and just all the different stuff that, you know, encompasses that NCAA Selection Sunday for both the men and the women was a lot of fun to see going on yesterday.
Well, so Baylor opens up against UC Santa Barbara. We're going to hear from their play-by-play voice today at 5 o'clock. California, Santa Barbara, a team that can they're a 14th seed. I saw a couple of people thinking they have a good matchup with Baylor. Here's my only reason to think Baylor wins at least twice, and it may be very soft or it might be brilliant, that they are in the best conference in America. Okay, that doesn't mean you win during the tournament because last year they got knocked out by North Carolina early. But Creighton has been on and off. You see Santa Barbara, you know, again, doesn't this conference, I'm hoping for everybody that it helps you get through at least a couple of games because of who you've been playing, or are you just so beat down it's not like fresh air that you get to play somebody else?
I think it's different for every team. Like, you know, there was a year where I thought, you know, Baylor, once they got out of the conference, would be, you know, kind of gold. Then they lost to Yale, you know, but they were just so beat down by the conference stretch that they just didn't have any gas left in the emotional tank, and the team, you know, got hot against them, and they just couldn't beat them there in Providence. But I think that they've got two good matchups, whether it is Creighton or NC State or whatever. But UC Santa Barbara and then Creighton or NC State, I do think that, you know, they've got a really nice path to the Sweet 16 now. They don't have a nice path out of the Sweet 16, which nobody really does. I mean, like, you're in the Sweet 16. It's not like, you know, it's not gumdrops and rainbows once you get in there. But I do think they have a nice path to the Sweet 16, given the fact that, like, you know, it could have been a lot rougher. They could have wound up in a different part. But, yeah, I think they match up pretty well.
It could have been rougher than where they are?
Yeah, of course it could.
With Alabama and Arizona?
Well, at least in the first week. We're talking about the first weekend here. Now,
okay.
After the first weekend, like I said, I mean, it's Alabama and Arizona, and, like, you know, you're going to have to, you know, or see, here's the thing. You either have to beat Alabama or Arizona to get to the Final Four, or you have to beat a team that clearly is playing well above its head who beat those teams. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting.
I mean, all that, you know, the region, they just need to go win a game first. Like, I mean, this team has limped into this postseason, one and done at the Big 12 tournament, can't beat Iowa State. And, you know, just are very hot and cold. And yeah, I mean, I think that their path looks good and all that. And I understand that's what we're supposed to do, is look at their path and project and do all that. But, I mean, I'm looking at this first game, and then I'm kind of ready to go from there. I mean, yeah, I think that there is a nice spot for them as the number 3 seed to get into the Sweet 16. I think that should be the bare minimum expectation. But I also know how hard it is to go and claim the Sweet 16 and how hard it is to go hang one of those banners. It's not just, you know, you just do it like it's nothing. It's difficult to win a couple of games in the tournament. But, I mean, yeah, should they beat UC Santa Barbara? I would hope so. They're the 3 seed versus the 14. Now, I understand it's March, and that That's why we love the tournament, and it's so crazy and everything. But, yeah, I damn sure believe they should be able to beat UC Santa Barbara, and I dang sure believe they should be able to go beat Creighton or NC State, whoever they would face potentially in the second round. Now, that obviously gets you a little bit closer. If Creighton wins, then you're not really that far separated. And again, that's why it's hard to get in the Sweet 16. But, yeah, I fully expect them, if they played in the ACC or the Big 12 or whatever as a number 3 seed, to beat the 14. They absolutely should be able to accomplish that. If they don't, man, that would be something else.
It'd be super flame out, yeah.
For all of the efforts that went into building this roster and going and getting Jalen Bridges and going and recruiting Keontae George and having, all the guys come back that did, and Jonathan Chamwa-Chachua to come back from his injury, like all those things that happened to go bow out in the first round, that would be a massive disappointment. I don't care if you want to spin that as like, well, it's March, it's madness or whatever. Yeah, it's March, and crazy things happen, and so it's not impossible that a 3 could get upset by a 14, but that would be a gigantic disappointment for Scott Drew's program. So I'm all about just getting through this first game and then seeing where we go from there. But my early expectation is bare minimum a Sweet 16 appearance for this team.
All right, so let's look at the 12-5 matchups, because those are the ones, I don't know historically if that's, but it seemed like, let's look at some of these here. Virginia Commonwealth and 5th seeded St. Mary's.
I'll take VCU all day.
Then why are they 12 and St. Mary's a 5? I've always wondered about, I know, and I kind of, but why not seed them the way that they are and how good they are?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not on the committee,
Right.
but I'm taking VCU in that game. Yeah.
All right.
I just
Craig, VCU and I haven't studied all the teams, but just I hear a lot about VCU. Obviously, Shaka did a great job with them, but he's gone. But they're still very, very talented. And so St. Mary's and VCU.
I mean, I haven't gone and dove into the brackets at all, but yeah, give me Shaka Smart, and what a great year that they've had.
No, he was there. Shaka Smart used to be at VCU.
Oh yeah, he was a Marquette. Yeah, no, give me VCU, I guess. I mean, but again, you're asking the wrong guy right now.
Here's part of the reason. I do not have respect for that conference outside of Gonzaga. That St. Mary's, the WC. It kind of. I mean, look, sometimes they have their good runs and all, but I think that VCU's probably played better teams than St. Mary's all year, save Gonzaga. But yeah, I think that's to me, in my opinion, I've always thought of it as a one team.
VCU
league.
Creates a ton of turnovers. Every 4 times a team brings the ball up the floor, they turn the ball over against their defense. Now, Drake in Miami. The Miami, Florida had a piece of the regular season title in the ACC.
And not a great league this year, the ACC. So, yeah, that's another one I picked at 12-5. Those are the two 12s I picked were Drake and the last one we said VCU.
Okay.
So.
Drake Bulldogs back in, I think, the mid-'60s, played maybe UCLA for a national title. He had a guard. I can't remember. Of course, that was 60 years ago, and only I might remember that. Craig, anything on Drake and Miami?
No, I mean, really, I haven't dove into these, so no,
Okay.
I don't really have particular thoughts on any of these. I mean, I'm interested in going over them, but I don't have anything set.
We'll just kind of hit it on 12 and 5. Charleston Cougars. This is a team. It's a lot of love. Charleston, College of Charleston, and San Diego State. In Orlando, they play on Thursday afternoon.
Yeah, I just thinking about this one, I think San Diego State's just been a little bit better all year, but and then San Diego State walked into the year thinking they were going to make the tournament all year, and they did. Charleston, obviously from one big league, it's a little bit different, but yeah, I took San Diego State.
College of Charleston shoots a ton of threes, like 30 in a game. They just love to launch them at all sorts of different angles. Then Oral Roberts and our guy Paul Mills against 5th seeded and red-hot 9-game winning streak ACC tournament champion Duke.
Yeah, see, this is the one I really would have liked to pick because of Paul Mills and how much respect I have for him and everything he's done at Oral Roberts. But, man, Duke's just playing so well right now. I mean, they're just playing so well. John Shire has, whatever early season I'm not Coach K bumps in the road that he had to get through, he's clearly gotten through them, and if not for the early part of the ACC schedule, they would have won that league outright because they played better than every single team in that league down the stretch, and it wasn't even close.
They did. They absolutely did. And so Duke, of course, a 5th seed, which is about as high as I could ever. Now, there have been a couple other years when they were a low seed, didn't make the tournament, but that's a great finish for them, winning 9 consecutive games. All right, Kansas, a 1 seed, Texas 2, Baylor 3, K-State 4, Baylor and Kansas State. Even Kansas with the 2 losses to Texas in the last week. Then you have TCU, Iowa State, West Virginia, the rest of the Big 12 that's in the tournament. So, Ole Miss today hired Chris Beard.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a shock, especially once there were no charges or anything like that. I'm curious to see how this goes long term. If I were Ole Miss, I would be crossing my fingers that Chris Beard and his fiance doesn't work out, because that appears to be a bit of a volatile relationship, and that stuff just doesn't go away. So, that's what I would be hoping for. But look, they don't mind a little noise at Ole Miss, and not that he's never done anything like this. He's just a bit of a loudmouth. They got Lane Kiffin and Chris Beard in the same athletic department. And so we'll see. I mean, I think he'll get the program turned around really quickly, but I do think he's probably lost a little bit of credibility. Like, he probably can't just walk into the transfer portal like he did before and, pluck the guys at Texas and that he did, and then do that at Ole Miss. I'm sure there'll be a little bit of comeuppance for his dismissal at Texas, but it probably won't be what the world feels is justified for it.
I don't really enjoy how we kind of just laugh and go, of course, the SEC, and just accept it that they go and pick up guys that otherwise we would have more of an issue with if they were getting picked up. I feel like there's a little bit of a pass given more so for them, because there's just this idea of like, well, it's the SEC, that's what they do. It's kind of like, no rules. It's, you point out this is the conference that is like the second chance spot, you know what I mean? And I think, from that standpoint, it's just kind of a funny thing to observe. It's like, oh, yeah, of course that's where he headed, months removed, or just a couple months removed from this decision. But that's just sort of the way that it is now. But beyond that, the charges ended up being what they were, and they were dismissed, and he's not in any trouble. And his whatever she is now seems to that whole situation seems to have quieted down and appears okay, best as we know it to be. I obviously we're all in the kind of dark on that. It's not really any of our business, but it's somewhat our business, just his personal life, given that, what just happened resulted in this hire to begin with. So that's something that's going to probably just linger in the background. And you can best believe if anything were to pop up again, that's going to be a giant story. So, I'm sure that he's done and his people have done everything they can to ensure that, something like that doesn't happen again. And I hope that it doesn't for everyone's sake involved. But, it's that, beyond just the risk of, okay, could this pop off again? Like, is this volcano dormant or is it not? Outside of that, yeah, of course it's a brilliant hire. It's a duh. It's a great hire for Ole Miss. There's no question about that, and he'll do really well for them. I would imagine he'll hit the ground running and make them a better program, I think, in a short amount of time. And so it's a gain, but again, it's just kind of like it's just like, of course, Ole Miss benefited from that situation. You know what I mean? It was almost like there was no break in the action. But, there was a couple months there where obviously he was sidelined and the future was very much in question. So now that that's taken care of, there's nothing preventing it. And so, smart for Ole Miss to be the first in line to go and scoop him up.
Well, an Ole Miss alum on our chat room, SPDNMS3, as an Ole Miss alumni, I can tell you that all I care about, and so I'm thinking I know where he's going here. No. He said, all I care about is being entertained until the pitcher takes the mound, the defending national champions, of course, in baseball. And so the focus is on that at this particular time. I mentioned Drake. A couple of you, Terry Frazier and I think maybe Jeremy, they lost in 1967. They finished third in the Final Four. I think they were beaten by Lou Alcindor back in the day when UCLA was on that ridiculous run of winning, 10 of 11 national titles, or whoever it was back in the day. But that's who it was. For some reason, that's the only thing I think about Drake other than the singer that we see. From Jeremy, I don't see the upside of hiring Beard. His scandal obviously makes for an enormous recruiting hurdle. No, he'll recruit well.
No, you would think so, right?
He'll be
you would
fine.
think so, but not really. Not really at all.
There will be a couple of players that he does not get because of it, but it's not going to be the amount of players that you would. No, if you're in your mind have a he should not get 15 of the 50 players that he goes and recruits, over his time at Ole Miss because of this. You need to lower that to about 3. Like, that's probably what it'll be.
Yeah. No,
because he's
going to get him.
There'll be a couple of guys who's like, he goes to recruit and he's like, I don't know. I'm uncomfortable with this. Because the other thing that Chris Beard can do now is NIL. It was with NIL. It'd be like, yeah, that wasn't a big deal. Look, there was no charges. Name one among us who hasn't walked in the blah, 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 blah. And then be like, here's cash. And they'd be like, oh, well, everybody's,
That makes mom or dad, both, and the player seem to be pretty happy. So there we are with that.
Yeah, I don't think there's much of that going on in college sports where there's much of a feeling of, there's a hangover for many of these hires. I mean, we've seen in the last offseason, I think somebody pointed out where like Bobby Petrino got brought back at A&M. You've got Chris Beard heading to Ole Miss, and that's what second chance, third chance, fourth chance for Bobby Petrino. And Beard, you knew was going to get a second chance so long as those charges didn't, continue on. And, there's other more extreme examples over the years. But, yeah, this is college sports. That doesn't really stick except for save like a couple of people maybe that have outright been, blacklisted. And besides that, I mean, everybody, if you're a good enough coach, you're going to get an opportunity somewhere at some level. And there's, I count on less than one hand the folks that don't.
Yeah.
And Chris Beard was certainly in that situation, and given that story, so long as those charges got settled, he was likely going to be back on the sideline pretty quickly. So here you go.
Patino went to Iona.
Yeah.
He's about to, or at least it looks like the next stop might be somewhere like St. John's or whatever, or who knows? I don't think Georgetown's in the mix, or maybe they are. But he got an opportunity at Iona.
But that's nothing even close to what Beard. That was a totally different situation. That was really, a totally different set of circumstances there. But yeah, I mean, he's rumored for now the big guy. The big guy name in this offseason. Texas Tech, I know that's immediately where a lot of their minds went. And, of course, a lot of people were like, he's not going to Lubbock, Texas. But, that's immediately what, a few people's minds went to. And, I know his name will be bandied about elsewhere too. But yeah, that's a completely separate thing. But, sure, you coach, you're going to get an opportunity.
With Patino in particular, look, for Texas Tech, if you're looking for a coach who's been fired for not abusing his players, then that's your guy, because he got fired. I don't think anybody that was on that recruiting trip was all that pissed off about what happened. So, but the thing about college athletics and the coaches and all that stuff is we like to think there's a moral high ground, because it's loud on what you think the moral high ground is. But if you actually clawed your way up to it, it would be a pretty lonely spot. Because, ultimately schools are going to do what is best for them financially, and what's best for them financially often does not live up on the moral high ground.
Yeah. So there's that. Beard to Ole Miss. How about this, a quick nugget? And Evan Miyakawa will join us. He's a college basketball analytics, got a EvanMIA.com is analytics. He's got a lot of the odds and all that stuff. Here's just a note. Has nothing really possibly to do with what is the future involving at least one team in the Pac-12 and also the Big Ten. But this is something our good friend James Crepea, who writes for the Oregonian. The interim chancellor at Wisconsin, at the time when the USC and UCLA were welcomed into the Big Ten, is now the president or will be the next president at Oregon. The Northwestern president was at Oregon. Now, that means nothing, perhaps, but just a note from James Crepea. I thought that was pretty cool, where the guy now at or going to be at Oregon was at Wisconsin and opened arm, welcomed USC and also UCLA. One quick pro football note. Jimmy Garoppolo has been signed by the Las Vegas Raiders to replace Derek Carr, who is no longer there. Scott Drew, Garrett, will on any kind of the experience that Baylor has from past tournaments, does that make a difference this week as they open up Friday against UC Santa Barbara?
Well, I think with us, it goes back to our first tournament in 2008 and probably the Sweet 16 in 1998 for me with my brother hitting that shot to beat Ole Miss and tournament games before that. So, I mean, you use all your Sweet 16, your Elite 8, your first round games weren't successful, and you try to put all that in the memory bank and improve and not make same mistakes and then repeat success. With that, the best thing I can tell you is we have players that played on that national championship team, so they know what it takes to win a national championship. And it starts with player-led team and player leadership, and Flo and Adam have done a great job. John has done a great job, and I know those guys will continue. And it's a greater sense of urgency, but just dealing with the distractions, the pressure that come along with the NCAA tournament. As far as coaches in particular, we like routines. So practices we did and practice plans we did where we were successful, we do the same thing. Practice plans where we weren't successful, we change up. So you're constantly trying to duplicate what worked and reinvent what didn't work and find better ways to do things. So that's what we'll continue to do. I think it'll be the only year that the NCAA tournament hopefully is played in a COVID bubble. So if it ever has that situation again, we have the blueprint for that.
Yeah, that's Scott Drew from late last night, his Zoom meeting with the media after they found out where they would be a number 3 seed playing in Denver against UC Santa Barbara. We'll have more from Scott Drew in a little bit. All right, when we come back, Evan Miyakawa, evanmiya.com, analytics. He's already got who he thinks are the odds based on his data, who will win or who has the best chance to win to get to the Final Four, and much, much more. This is 365 Sports. IdealMRI.com in the Central Texas Marketplace in Waco, just on the southern part of the city, off of I-35 on Highway 6, just off of that, in that kind of a mall-type area, shopping center. Every scan performed on a state-of-the-art machine, read by a board-certified expert. They also have a level of convenience and comfort uncommon in healthcare, and I've told you the story where I've had an appointment set up, gone there, and I don't think I sat down in that little waiting room for more than 5 to 8 to 10 minutes ever. There's somebody else that's in the machine, you're next. And it's not like, like a convenience store, people coming and going, getting chips or gas. It's not like that. You also won't be in a room with 25 or 30 people waiting for a long, long time for your name to be called. The pricing is fixed. It's $497 every single time. It's transparent. That's incredibly affordable considering the average is $1,100 as healthcare costs, of course, continue to rise. IdealMRI.com.
Just as teams are celebrating on the courts, your mountaintop experience begins during the Jeep Celebration event at Allen Samuels in Waco. Get a 2023 Jeep Grand Cherokee Laredo with total values up to $5,500 on second and third row options, or a 2023 Jeep Gladiator Sport with up to $5,000 in total values. And if we don't have exactly what you want, we can help you build the new custom Jeep of your dreams. It's the Jeep Celebration event at Allen Samuels in Waco.
Do you or your kids get nervous about going to the dentist? Stonewood Dental, Dr. Steve Childress, he can help.
I've spent a career taking care of patients who as children had bad experiences, and now they're adults that hate going to the dentist. If I get a kid at 3 years old and they come every 6 months and it's a happy experience, it's normal for them. Now they have an accident at 6 or 7 or 8 at school. Now they have a broken tooth or a trauma, and they have to come here. They're used to lights, they're used to water in their mouth, they're used to experience, they already trust us. It's amazing what we can do with that kid without it being a negative thing. But if I see a 6 or 7 or 8 year old that's never been to the dentist, and now they have a trauma or an unfortunate unexpected toothache, it's harder to do that for that kid and it not be somewhat of a negative experience. So bottom line is I try to teach kids and adults and teenagers and everybody the way I'd want my family treated, which is where it's a necessary part of life. You just take care of it. It doesn't have to be that big a deal.
Learn more, stonewood-dental.com.
Baylor Scott and White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott and White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
Hey, this is Bryce Petty, former starting quarterback and two-time Big 12 champion, and I know firsthand the importance of being in top shape both on and off the field. So listen up, men. If you're feeling beat down day in and day out and looking for that high-performance edge that separates the men from the boys, then look no further than the Petty Clinic Low T in Waco. Petty Clinic is a comprehensive men's healthcare clinic with an atmosphere catering to men. Board-certified Dr. Kent Petty has a special interest in offering the highest quality medical care to men of all ages. Some of the services offered include screening and treatment for low testosterone or thyroid, infertility, high blood pressure, diabetes, high cholesterol, sleep apnea, while offering comprehensive wellness exams and complete men's health lab panels. High performance men, remember, it's not just a Petty thing. This is Bryce Petty, encouraging you to reach out and Google search Petty Clinic Low T or go to pettycliniclowt.com and get your complimentary lab screening today.
It takes time to reach goals. It's a truth that applies to more than sports. It goes for your financial goals as well. You work hard for your money, and you deserve an investment strategy that lines up with your game plan. And Chuck Verno, your Edward Jones financial advisor, can help. If financial investments aren't putting forth the effort you desire, stop by today for a financial review. Chuck Verno, 720 North 64th Street in Waco, 254-732-1161. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness on Lakeshore Drive is premier, elite, life-changing experience where you can change your mind, body, and soul. Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness offers over 40 group exercise classes each week, including boot camp, indoor cycling, and more. If you haven't been there in quite some time, you're missing out on the improvements for our members. New flooring in the weight room and locker rooms, new paint and mirrors added in the weight room and group exercise room, with more new machines arriving over the next few months. New free weights, weight machines, TRX, rowing machines, stationary bikes, new treadmills, new elliptical machines on spacious weight room floor. Personal training with Christy London, Randall Corley, and Alex Botch, where you will be encouraged and motivated to grow. There's sauna, whirlpool, tanning bed, and kids club. The amenities are great. 16 tennis courts plus an 1,100-seat stadium court, 8 pickleball courts, youth and adult tennis and pickleball lessons. Visit our website, wacotennis.com, or visit Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness on Lakeshore Drive in Waco.
This is 365 Sports.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
Evan Miyakawa has been a part of this show for, well, really back since we launched it in April of 2020, coming up on 3 years. He's got analytics, and he got his he put out his rankings of the championship percentage of teams that get into the round of 32, Sweet 16, on and on, semifinals and championship. And Evan joins Craig Smoak, Paul Catalina, David Smoak here on 365 Sports. Thank you, Evan. You know, you have these numbers, you crunch them, or your algorithms and all of that. Was there anything of the numbers that popped out that surprised you?
I think relatively speaking, we've got a lot more Final Four national title threats that are not on the 1 and 2 line than normal. From a numbers perspective, you have teams like Gonzaga, UConn, Tennessee, even though they're dealing with injuries, and then kind of sliding even further, Creighton, who's a potential opponent for Baylor, all have really strong teams that are kind of outside that typical 1 to 2 seed range where you typically see your national champion. So other than, say, like Houston and Gonzaga, the field after that, to me, seems very, very wide open. So I expect that we're definitely going to see some chaos in this bracket. Each region is, unique in its own way. But I see that there could be some really heavy, title challengers that are kind of outside of those traditional top 1 or 2 seeds in each region.
What do you think about Baylor's draw, at least for the opening weekend?
I think it's tough-ish. I mean, I think they still should be expected to do fairly well, but, UCSB is no slouch of an opponent. I actually, paid more attention to UC Santa Barbara than, most teams kind of in that seed range because I live in Santa Barbara now. So I've been to one UCSB game. I know some guys on staff there. They've kind of had an interesting story where I think from a, player skill perspective, they've always been the best team in the Big West without question. But then they kind of had this skid in January, February, especially after they had a fight break out in one of their games. They had a suspension, lost several games there. But they've been on fire recently, have won a lot of games, and, went on a tear through the Big West tournament, got into the tournament, I think, as they thought that they should, winning that championship, getting into March. So I've been impressed with them. I think Baylor should, be a comfortable favorite in that game. I've got them favored by 8. That's a little bit less than what we're seeing Vegas at right now, which has Baylor favored by 10.5. And then after that game, Creighton, I think is really strong as a 6 seed. I have them rated more as a better team in my team model than Baylor, just a couple spots ahead of them. And then, after that, Arizona, they're also a strong team. Alabama, one of the favorites to win the whole thing. So I think it's a relatively tough path for Baylor. And so not that they can't make it far in this tournament, but there are other teams in different regions seeded similarly to them that have an easier path than Baylor does.
Evan, what did the numbers kind of tell you about the Bears as the season went along? I mean, obviously super talented. Injuries came into play somewhat as well over the course of the season. But did anything sort of change for them? Anything noteworthy observation-wise from what spit back at you from the data that you gathered?
So I think for Baylor, the whole season has kind of felt like they have a really high ceiling and a really low floor. I think with their offense, and their guards that they have, everyone recognizes that Baylor has the backcourt talent to beat anyone in the country. And I think people, especially thinking back to the year that Baylor won the whole thing, and then they see the 4 guards that they have now, it feels very similar. Obviously, this group probably not quite as talented in that regard, but offensively, this team has firepower. I think the big difference is just that lack of defense. Typically Scott Drew teams are really sound defensively. This year, it's just not the case. And, when you look at teams in the past that do well in March, make the Final Four, make the national title game, typically those are teams more often than not that, have a really strong core of guys, regardless of whether they've reached expectations or not that season, and 2, are fairly balanced offensively and defensively. And so this year that's not the case for Baylor. That does not mean that they can't do well in this tournament, but that's going to be a challenge if they have an off night defensively. I mean, you're looking at games against like Creighton and Arizona, who are, offensive fire powers. And if Baylor doesn't play well defensively in one of those games, that's going to be really a really tough task for them. So that's my big worry for them going forward.
Evan, there's also, I don't know what exactly the name of it, but it's something about net defense or the defensive net, whatever, that nobody has won, or a high percentage of teams that have won the national title over the last several years are inside, the top 30 defensive teams in the country. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think it's something around that mark. That's certainly, Baylor's nowhere near that this year. I sometimes raise my eyebrows at some of those numbers that are passed around just because it's really easy to say, the last 5 national champions have all had this in common, and then the next year something completely different happens. Mm-hmm. So there, correlation doesn't always mean causation, but in that particular sense, in general, I think teams that are balanced-ish, as in having often like a really, really good offense or defense, and then on the other side of the ball being pretty solid, is typically what you're looking for in a national champion or a Final Four pick. Obviously, you're going to have years where you have, say, like a Loyola Chicago make the Final Four, and they're not going to meet any of those criteria. So it's pretty wide open in that sense. But for Baylor, definitely not as balanced a team as they've had in previous years. Certainly not like they had 2 years ago when they won the whole thing. But their offense still is one of the absolute best in the country. You could argue that they have the best backcourt in the country. In fact, I actually did an analytical calculation of best backcourts in the country that I haven't published yet, but Baylor was number 1 in terms of offensive backcourts in the country based on player impact. Baylor definitely has the best one there, mathematically speaking. So I like that for them, and it'll be interesting to see how they play against some of these potentially other really offensive-minded teams.
Why is this Houston's year, and why is it not Houston's year?
Well, I think Houston, in some ways, is underrated by the consensus. I think because of the fact that we've seen a team like Gonzaga the last several years get a 1 seed, being from a conference that's not in the top 5 or 6, and kind of being off people's radars for most of January, February, and March. Even when the numbers back up a team being good, most people still feel like, I don't know about this team. Can they really win in March? And, people rip on Gonzaga for not winning a national championship, but, it's very hard to do. And they came up against, in that national title game versus Baylor, potentially one of the best college basketball teams we've seen the last decade or two. So I think people see Houston, and they think Gonzaga similarly to the last several years. So if there's a reason for them not to win it, I think it's the fact that, they don't play in one of the top conferences and haven't been tested quite as much down the stretch. Potentially Marcus Sasser's injury is a worry, although I'm not too worried about that. I think he'll be fine once they get to their harder opponents. But in terms of them winning it all, I mean, numbers-wise, they have been a top 5 team all season long. I think I've had them number 1 in my ratings for probably the last 2 or 3 months straight. They're just so sound offensively, defensively. They have veterans. They have guys who've been to the Final Four on this team. And I don't think they rely heavily on one single player. I think their style of play is really stifling for other teams. It's just really hard to force Houston to play the way you want them to play. Typically, it's the other way around. You're going to have to play their game. So I think they're really, really hard to game plan against. I think they're very consistent. And I definitely think they have the roster, say spots 1 through 8 to be better than pretty much everyone else in the country.
Evan, what were a couple of, in your eyes, some of the more egregious seedings that stood out?
That is a good question. I was surprised by seeing Texas A&M drop to a 7 seed. I can understand why, given their weak non-conference strength of schedule, but I think on the balance of play, based on how well they played down the stretch in the SEC, based on the resume that they put in getting to the title game in the SEC, I think they are definitely a stronger team than a 7 seed. I think they could have been more of a 5 seed, in my opinion, based on where I thought they were going to be. So I think that's tough for them, and now they have to face a really hot Penn State team who's the 10 seed there in that region. So, and then, potentially a game against Texas. So I think Texas A&M is going to feel a little gypped there. I think that was the biggest surprise to me. I was also not happy to see Florida Atlantic fall to the 8-9 game. I thought that they were, based on how strong they are, probably more of a 6-7 range. So I love a team like Florida Atlantic that kind of remind me of Loyola Chicago a couple years ago as an 8 seed who ended up beating Illinois and going to the Sweet 16. So I don't like seeing them in that game because that's just a harder spot for them. But, they have a tough game against Memphis. We'll see how they do.
Among the teams, I have a page in front of me that you put out as far as the best teams. Their odds to get to the 32 all the way to the championship, Houston and Alabama 1 and 2. Who has made you track this, who's made the largest or biggest jump perhaps in the last month?
That is a good question. I feel like in some ways that might be Gonzaga, just because they definitely have had a weaker team this year compared to kind of what we're used to seeing from them. But they've been really hot over the last month. I think they've moved up several spots in my rankings, and they're now number 2 in the entire country behind Houston, which, might be a little bit higher than what their true team strength is. But I see them might even be the favorite to move out of the West in that really loaded region with Kansas and UCLA, not to mention teams like UConn, who's also really strong too. So I think Gonzaga, their odds have definitely jumped a lot as they put in some really good performances over the last several weeks, kind of heading into the tournament.
What about Duke?
Duke also very strong. Recently, there were definitely lots of question marks kind of beginning of the season, middle of the season for them. I think the Duke-Oral Roberts game, that 5-12 matchup, that's my favorite matchup of the entire first round. I mean, talk about a juicy game. I've been identifying Oral Roberts as having all of the ingredients to be a March Madness Cinderella for a couple weeks. We've seen them do it before. And when they did it as a 15 seed 2 years ago, they had a much worse team than they have this year. They're still led by Max Asmith, small guard who's incredible. And now they have this 7'4", 7'5" Connor Vanover transfer from Arkansas, who has been incredible for them and has been blocking shots. He's really added a dimension to their offense. So I think Duke Oral Roberts, just a very fascinating game. Oral Roberts' offense is one of the best in the country, and Duke is on paper way less experienced in terms of years in college basketball, tournament experience, all that kind of thing than Oral Roberts. So intrigued by that game. I still think Duke is going to be a favorite in that game. I think if they get past them, I wouldn't count them out of making a deep run, but very intrigued by that matchup.
Yeah, eventually they're probably going to have to run up against Purdue if they were in any kind of deep run for Duke. Who do you think is the biggest matchup nightmare for anybody in the tournament?
I feel like I keep going back to this West region. This West region to me feels like the region of death. And so I'm circling UConn. I think UConn is another team that is way better than their seed. They have a 4 seed right now, but I have them as having the 4th highest odds of any team in the entire field of cutting the nets down at the end of this. And the reason for that is because I think they've been a team that's had several different phases to their season. They were really hot to start, then they kind of cooled off in the middle of the East play, and then they've really turned it on the Jets again the last month or so. And they didn't win the Big East tournament, but they've been really strong. I think their roster is extremely balanced. I think I could blink and see them in the Final Four, and then we could all say, why didn't we see this coming? UConn is incredible. So I think for them, any team in their region, St. Mary's on the 5, Kansas on the 1 line, not happy to see UConn. I think if UConn and Kansas play in a Sweet 16 game, I might say that Vegas would put Kansas maybe as a 1-point favorite in that game, but it's going to be close to a toss-up. Would not be surprised to see UConn win that spot. So very underseeded, I think, compared to their team strength. Wouldn't be shocked to see them do well.
There are reasons, if you're an Oklahoma State fan, to probably be a little bitter. And then there are also, you look at evidence, and, well, they had a lot of opportunities to get just one more win. But they did end up, 8-10 or whatever in the Big 12. I forgot their overall record, or 7-11. Can't remember for sure. Based on your analytics, do you feel like Oklahoma State should have been in?
I haven't really looked into their case specifically that much, but I think you can make an argument for the fact that any team that just missed the tournament had everything in their power to get in. And I think if you flip any of those Big 12 losses for Oklahoma State into a win, that might be enough to get them in the field. So, yeah, you can make an argument that, they could have deserved to be in over, say, Nevada, for example. But at the end of the day, if 1 or 2 games go differently and you close it down the stretch when you didn't, you'd be in this field. So I think you can definitely, have a gripe potentially there, but, ultimately it was in your power. This sport is about winning games at the end of the day. And given how many opportunities you have in a conference like the Big 12, I think you got to be more disappointed in yourself than anything else.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's one of those. Again, we're talking about 68, 69, or 70. Who's the best player based on analytics and data on either side, or combination of offense and defense? Who are the top 2 or 3 players in the country?
Well, number one, still definitely Zach Edey. He's cooled down a little bit, as has Purdue down the stretch, which I think is interesting because a lot of people are, potentially picking them to be upset in the 2nd or 3rd round of this tournament. But I still do think Zach Edey is that player. And from an analytics perspective, he has a huge gap on the rest of the field in my metric that measures overall player impact. 2nd and 3rd on that list for me, in terms of my player metric that tracks this stuff, is Azula Tubelis from Arizona and Marcus Sasser from Houston. And Sasser, that's an interesting one because he's the most important player on the best team in the field for Houston, and he was absent from that championship game in their conference tournament title where they lost to Memphis. So, word on the street is that the injury is not that bad and that he should be fine, but that's going to be worth monitoring. If he ends up missing more time, potentially, that next weekend, if they're in the Sweet 16 or Elite 8, that would be a huge loss for Houston because he's one of the top 3 most impactful players in the country, according to my model.
Thank you, Evan. We appreciate your time. Evan Miyakawa, EvanMiya.com, MIYA.com on Twitter. He does a great job. I've got all this in front of me. For example, of the teams he has rated, the only teams that have a 100% odds, or based on analytics, of getting to the round of 32, which you think there might be out of, 68 teams, perhaps 20. But Houston, Alabama, Purdue, and Kansas. Well, guess what? Those are all the number one seeds. Nobody else is 100. Texas, 82.6. UCLA, 95.1. Let's see. Baylor, 82.4. So the number one seeds all are 100% they're going to reach the round of 32. But just because you might have better odds based on analytics to get in the round of 32 or the Sweet 16, sometimes a team like Marquette, which is about 10 or 11 or 12 overall to make it, to win the championship, they have a higher number to get to the Final Four than a couple of teams ahead of them, Creighton and San Diego State. But if they get to the championship, they have a slightly better analytic number to win it all, which, again, would be interesting if those teams get there. But Shaka and Marquette doing what they did, and based on Baylor's flameout, one reason why Baylor's at 3 seed. Period. That was it. Kansas State lost. Marquette won. They won throughout the weekend, and one reason why, and should be a reason, and a valid reason, that Baylor dropped the number 3 seed. They beat Baylor during the early part of the season. When we come back, a couple of notes from the chat room. I think I see a super chat from Ryan Nelson. Thank you for $2. We'll get to that and more. And this is 365 Sports.
Richard Carr, Buick GMC Cadillac, they are the people that you can count on. Donnie and the good folks over there have hooked me up in the past, and they are ready to hook you up as well, whether that be looking for a brand-new vehicle, looking for a pre-owned vehicle, or just looking for some great customer service and repair. Right now, they have dozens of Sierra trucks as the Texas-size selection is back on the lot over at Richard Carr. Qualified buyers can save thousands on a new 2023 GMC Sierra SLT 1500. Also get 2.9% financing on new 2023 GMC Sierra trucks. If you're looking to go the SUV route, well, you can get lease payments with $5,000 down cash, or trade at $269 per month and save thousands on the 2023 Buick Envisions, a luxury SUV without the luxury price and with a smooth and quiet ride. Also, amongst the pre-owned car and truck offerings, they've got several vehicles under $20,000. All of them are thoroughly inspected and ready to finance for almost any credit rating and quite affordable. Richard Carr has quality vehicles of all types ready to drive today, and maybe you're not looking to buy. You just want to keep your car in tip-top shape. Well, check out their award-winning service department, which is standing by to keep you on the road. You can get hooked up over on the website or by giving them a call. Set an appointment over the phone or on the website for quick and reliable service. In business for 23 years in Central Texas, Richard Carr has built a reputation as the people you can count on for your automotive needs. Run by proud Central Texans. Log on to richardcarr.com today. Call now or go see them now off Highway 6 at the Imperial X.
This is the soundtrack of life at Baylor.
There's a spark in your heart and a fire that's in your eyes.
If you're ready to take a big step toward a bright future, tap the banner below to check out the music video for a glimpse of life at Baylor University, where lights shine bright.
Stepping into a new pair of boots is great, but stepping into the boots of a U.S. Army officer can also add confidence and leadership skills to your son or daughter's career path. There are more than 150 occupational specialties to help them find the best fit for their future. See all the things your son or daughter can achieve in our boots at GoArmy.com. U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company, 254-598-8131 or 254-776-1543.
Let Camille Johnson Realtors guide you seamlessly through the process of buying your dream home or selling your current one. Commercial, farm and ranch, or residential, Camille Johnson Realtors can smoothly and successfully lead you through any transaction. With a team of 28 experienced agents who are excited about serving you, Camille Johnson Realtors services the entire greater Waco area. If you're in the market to buy or sell, contact Camille Johnson Realtors, 104 Midway Center in Woodway, or find them online at www.camillejohnson.com. Camille Johnson Realtors, elegant, charming, warm, welcome home.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be a part of the Waco community. We're a small family business right here in Central Texas, and our goal is to bring down the cost of healthcare while maintaining high quality. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important, and unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. That's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through the difficult time. We offer premium MRIs just like a hospital with state-of-the-art technology and specialists, but you'll pay less. Sometimes thousands of dollars less, whether you're using insurance or not. At Ideal MRI, we accept most insurance and there are no hidden costs, even offering financing if that's needed. Everything included in the price, and you'll not get something as a surprise in the mail later on. If you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. They'll know. You can schedule an appointment safely from home online in minutes at idealmri.com or give us a call, 833-IDEAL-MRI, idealmri.com.
There are 26 letters in the alphabet, over 600,000 words in the dictionary, and just 3 of them said together can change everything. Let's order pizza. Those 3 words lead to dough made from scratch and 3 fresh signature cheeses that blanket golden crust in a heavenly melt on Marco's Pizza that'll blow your mind. So visit marcos.com to order and stop by Marco's Pizza in Belmead, China Spring, Woodway, and in Robinson. Marco's. Pizza lovers get it.
This is 365 Sports. Text us at 254-339-1122. The text line is sponsored by Riverbend Liquor and Wine, with the most extensive variety of craft beer in Waco. A hidden gem on Lakeshore Drive and 19th Street.
Former Hartford men's basketball coach who became a great friend of the show back during the 2021 season. They opened 2021 NCAA tournament losing to Baylor. And John Gallagher, who basically left Hartford because they went down. They opted to go down. It's kind of a story in itself, but John Gallagher will join us to try to break down some of the matchups he's intrigued with, teams that he's seen. He'll join us today at 4 o'clock on this show. Ryan Nelson, $2. Houston, Auburn in Birmingham on Saturday would be electric. Well, that would be right next to Houston, of course, the top team, but Auburn would be playing right in their backyard.
Oh, I just thinking about that game with the way that Bruce Pearl plays and how physical they are, with how Kelvin Sampson plays and how good they are in defense. I'm going to throw it out there. If they get the wrong kind of crew there, both those teams are going to be in the bonus at the under 8 timeout in the first half. And both those teams will be in the bonus at the under 12 in the second half. Like, it is going to be a very physical game, and which is why you want the right type of officiating crew there that kind of knows that and will maybe at least early in the game keep it in their pocket for a little bit.
Otherwise, it turns into like just a snooze fest
because,
with free throws.
Yeah, because it's going to be, those are teams that are like Auburn, really physical, the way that they play. And that's what Kelvin Sampson's style is. Houston has a much better offense this year than they have in the last couple of years, but they're still not a team that, look, if they have one bad defensive game and a team scores 82 on them, they might be screwed now to the tournament, and which is probably what Auburn and everybody else who plays them is going to hope for, but they're built around defense. That's what Houston's thing is. They are a defensive team. I agree with you, Ryan. I think that that could be very electric.
Yeah, no, that would definitely be a great game on paper, and hopefully would pan out the same way, once they actually tip the ball. I think that would be a fantastic contest, and that's certainly already a hot ticket, apparently, the round of 32, the second round matchup there in Birmingham, because a lot of people are anticipating that. So apparently tickets have already started to go a little crazy with people eyeing that game. So, yeah, you're not the only one. nor are we, that are looking forward to that potential contest, although that has led to a bit of complaining from the Houston side of things, including Kelvin Sampson. How do you end up basically as a road team, as a number one overall, number one seed? How do you end up as a road team in round 2? That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And he even said, like, what should we be in a 9? Like, yeah. So they have room for complaints there. That doesn't really add up all that well. That you are basically a road team as a number 1 seed in round 2. Not sure how all that worked out for the committee, but that is one of the notable complaints I've seen more often than others as far as how the tournament bracket played out.
We will hear from John Gallagher in the next segment. I wanted to bring up a team that's intrigued me most of the year because of who they picked up as a transfer portal. Terrence Shannon from Tech averaged 17 points a game. Matthew Meyer, 13 points, and of course from Baylor. And yet, they've kind of just been there. They're I think they're in the 8-9 game, their first game. 7-2 when they played their way into Big 12 or Big 10 contention.
You should mention who you're talking about.
Illinois. Did I not say
No.
Illinois? Okay, Illinois. And then they played. They went 4-6 in 10 games, entering the NCAA tournament. Or entering the postseason. So they've been kind of hit and miss. Maybe a lot of these teams have been through that. Even as something that Evan brought up earlier, teams that have gone up and down or whatever. Baylor surely has been a roller coaster throughout the year. But thought with Shannon and Matthew Meyer combined with Brad Underwood that they would be a team that would compete to win the Big Ten title. Obviously, Purdue was very, very good among others, Indiana. But they just never seem to kind of light a match.
Well, I think that part of the thing is and I think Chris Beard saw this last year at Texas, when you have a team that's got a lot of transfers in it, they can be good, but when you play a team that's played together for a couple years, you tend to lose. That can match you maybe talent-wise. So I think maybe that's what happened a little bit to Illinois at stretches this year. I mean, they're a team that's built on their transfers. They're really good. Look, Arkansas is too, and that's another team that they're playing. Arkansas, a team that underwhelmed throughout the year mostly because of injuries, but we'll see. We'll see what happens there. I'm gonna answer Coach Gallagher's call here.
Okay, wet blanket, FU, Brad Underwood. Of course, Oklahoma State, wet blanket. Greg?
I mean, yeah, the expectations were a bit higher for them, but also you didn't name guys that actually inspired me to think that they were going to make a Final Four run either. They're very familiar names because we watched them in the Big 12, but yeah, that didn't mean that just by signing them up, that was a guarantee that they were going to be heading towards, Sweet 16 land or anything like that. So, yeah, they'll be an interesting team to monitor. I can see where, expectations were a little bit higher entering this season. But, hey, it's March, so all bets are off and time for somebody to go on a run.
He is a absolute gem of a guest. He was a hell of a coach at Hartford. John Gallagher joins us on 365 Sports. We'll always remember what he brought to the table back in 2021 NCAA tournament. He joins us on 365 Sports. When I sent him the text, he could not wait to be on with us, and we're so glad you are. How you been, Coach?
I love your show, the Smoky Boys. How's David, Craig, and Paul? Paul, how you doing? How you guys doing?
Doing great.
Good.
Doing
Coach,
great.
Appreciate you.
So, how much did you focus on Selection Sunday, knowing you've got other things you're doing as well? But was there anything in particular that you've chewed on this and digested it that comes to mind that was a surprise or,
I was at the Sons and Daughters. I was the guest speaker at the Sons and Daughters of St. Patrick's, so I had to speak. But I had it on my phone, and I actually think Baylor got a great matchup. And I will probably watch 10 to 12 games a day this year. I've never watched more Big 12 basketball because of Porter Moser. But I've watched ton of you guys. You're the best offensive team in the Big 12, but the worst defensive team.
Yep.
So it's ironic.
you have been watching them, that's for sure.
Yeah. So, but I love the fact that you got extra day rest. The last time you lost to Oklahoma State, then you played us, and then you went on that run. I think Baylor's set for a grade 8 run. I really do. I think if you look at it, Santa Barbara, who's very well coached. I watched them a ton in the Big West. I watch Joe Pasternak's team a ton, and they're very talented. But offensively speaking, you guys are an absolute handful. And I've studied you guys. I mean, if you guys can defend a little better, like, and this is what I used to say when I coached, and hopefully I get a job in the next 3 weeks. You turn yourself into a good defensive team by 2 more stops a half, 4 more a game. It's not a lot. It's 2 to 3 stops a half. And I just thought you guys, you ran into trouble in both of those Iowa State games. You couldn't get a stop when you needed it.
What do you think turns that on in a team? Do you have to be – we ask this of a lot of coaches. Do you have to want it, like, kind of in your bones playing defense? Or is it just something that just maybe takes some more guys some time to figure out?
Here's what it is. I mean, and listen, I've watched so much basketball, is, you know, you have to ask yourself, is Keontae George going to take it personal on the defensive end? And that's your best play. You won the national championship because Davion Mitchell took it personal. And that's it. I mean, it comes down to your best players deciding, look, we can't allow, you know, this to be easy. And look, we played you guys that year, and I'll never forget my feeling. I said, that team's not losing because Mitchell won't let them. And that's what I think you can make. I think you can get to the Final Four. But defensively, it's just going to have to be – you can't be 10th on the KenPom numbers. And I said this a month ago. You know, you're 10th on the KenPom numbers. You're not going to get to a grade 8. Because you need in these games in March, you have to be able to defend and rebound.
Coach, your thoughts on Texas, finished with the Big 12 tournament championship, and just really it'd be one thing if they had just gone and done that normally and Chris Beard was rolling along, but as you know, as everybody knows, that was not the situation. Rodney Terry, a bit of a pickle. He had to, take over and guide them these last couple of months, guided them very well, obviously. Just from a coach's point of view, what do you think of the job Rodney Terry did? And then also seeing Texas, what do you think of the threat that they are now entering March?
Rodney Terry's my coach of the year. He's my coach of the year. Unequivocally, you could argue Buzz and is right there, Buzz Williams at Texas A&M, but Rodney Terry, the job he done, I mean, 2 of his last 4 wins are double-digit wins against Kansas. The last regular season game, I watched that game. They held Kansas to 59. That's a 69-possession game. I wrote it down. They hold them to 59. You go into the title game, it's the 68-possession game. They score 56. So back-to-back games, it's why Texas can win the national championship. That's how good of a job Rodney Terry's done. He's a national, he's the national coach of the year. From all the circumstances he's had to deal with, he's a real leader. He's an unbelievable. People got to realize, when he was at UTEP, they were about to be real. I mean, they had 2 guys. One guy ended up in the Big East being a heck of a player, I think, at Providence. And then the other kid ended up in the Big 12. I mean, UTEP had some players. Rodney Terry, in my opinion, should be the next coach of Texas for a long time.
So how good is – we saw Marquette destroy Baylor, and Shock has done a really nice job. He's playing there, the style he played when he was at VCU, and he could just never really get the buy-in for that type of personality mentality at Texas. But, I mean, they're really, really good. Obviously, UConn, Xavier, Big East has some good teams. But how good is Marquette?
Marquette's good because Tyler Kolek, if you haven't seen him, is their left-handed point guard he was at George Mason. This is how fine line college basketball is. Dave Paulson gets fired at George Mason. If he stays at George Mason, Tyler Kolek doesn't leave. And George Mason is going on a great run. It's just a fine line in the business. So Tyler ends up going to Marquette. nationally, he's one of the best offensive players in the country. 6'3", about 190. He's got a really herky-jerky game. He can get spots on the floor. He plays at his pace. They can make a deep run. And look, they played you guys, and I know you guys were coming in there, and I think they beat you by 20-some, right?
Yeah, it was bad. Yeah.
I watched that game, and I think, everything's sort of universities. It's funny, like Shaka tried it. He gets to Marquette, it's like it's back. He's like it's a really strange thing, and I just think Shaka's done a great job too.
Did he change too much about himself at Texas because of that? Like, because he was like, well, they're probably not going to run the press here, and I probably don't have to get guys who need to run the press because I can get better athletes here. But does that all maybe make you change your own style without you realizing it?
There's a saying, when you keep on saying tomorrow's going to be better, it's an issue. You got to live in the present moment. And I think Shaka's doing a great job living in the present moment. I think everything at Texas was, here we come. We're going to be better. We're going to be better. We're going to be better. I think now he's back to Marquette. He's back to himself. We're just going to be great today. And I think he showed himself in that Big East tournament. I think he coached a great Big East tournament. His out of timeouts in the Big East tournament, he was sharp. He was detailed. He did a really good job in especially I think it was the under 8 timeout in the second half against UConn. He made a couple adjustments late in that game that I thought were really good.
Coach, you mentioned Buzz Williams. I mean, what a job that he did this year with Texas A&M. I mean, they were sensational, especially down the stretch, but great in SEC play. I know that there's some hand-wringing over where they were seated yesterday, and already a lot of talk about that second-round matchup. But, man, I don't know if you'd call it a turnaround or what, but just the building that he's done the last couple of years to get A&M where they are right now. How impressed are you, and what are your thoughts in watching the Aggies?
December 20th, they lose to Wofford at home. Okay?
Yeah.
I want you to think about this. Go look this up. I think it was the 20th or 21st. I took a journal on all the games I watched. I wrote down Texas A&M is dead. Is dead. They had no fire. They played with no competitive energy. What he did, Rodney Terry and him did the two best jobs in America. They then come back. They win, I think it was 8 in a row. And then they lost, I think, to Kentucky on a road game. But they won 17 SEC games. 17 SEC games. To be a 7 seed and win 17 SEC games, it's unthinkable. It's unthinkable. Like, that to me, I mean, their second-round matchup, remind me, who would that be?
Texas. Rodney Terry.
I mean, think about this. Texas got screwed of everybody because you're going to go against a team that's a Sweet 16 game. When you win 17 SEC games, you're a 4 or 5 seed, fellas. You're a 4 or 5 seed.
So is there anybody, and it's hard to say this because the 12-5 games are based on the seedings and all that, but is there anybody in particular that you think that may not be a single or a top 4, 5, or 6 seed that you can see making a run? Or how about Oral Roberts? They have Tennessee in the first round, but boy, Paul Mills has done a great job there.
Duke in the first round.
Duke, I'm sorry. They have Duke in the first round, which everyone's going to pick Duke. But, man, Oral Roberts ran the table in their conference, then ran the table in the tournament. Just trying to, someone like that, not that I'm saying they'll open up with a win against Duke.
Well, no, I mean, Oral Roberts on the board, is a 12 seed. And by KenPom numbers, I mean, you're talking about, Duke better watch out. Oral Roberts, how they run offense. These 12-5 games are nightmares. VCU, maybe the worst league in America to coach in now is the Atlantic 10. The worst league in America. There's 15 teams and one team got in. Go look at the money that those schools are spending. Go look at Dayton, St. Bonaventure. Basketball is really important to those schools. It's their college football, and you have one team out of 15 getting in. These jobs have become so hard, fellas. And, I mean, what's the difference between that league and the Ivy League? They're both getting one team, maybe two. That's why the Mountain West, if you want to look at a league that the NCAA put a lot of credence in, because Nevada got in and Rutgers didn't. Nevada was the last team in the tournament. So that tells me that Utah State, in the 10-7 game versus Missouri, Utah State's a team that can make a run. That's what the NCAA is telling me by the numbers. You know, Vegas has them as a favorite in the game in a 10-7 game. So Utah State would be a sleeper to me.
All right, I would get murdered by my fiance if I didn't ask you about her alma mater, Kansas. How do they go back-to-back when, one, no one really does that? I mean, Jay Wright's been the closest, and he even had a year in between lately. And, two, they really can't rely on their bench for anything offensively.
Yeah, here's the thing. And if you look at their numbers, and I've watched them a ton, I've never seen a team. I mean, Oklahoma had them beat at Kansas. Might be one of the hardest losses. I broke my remote. I threw it against the wall. Shattered after they lost that. You go look at the game. It was at Kansas. It was early in the season. I shattered my remote because I wanted Oklahoma to win that game so bad. They do not panic more than and he's the best coach in the tournament. I mean, I've never seen. He's so good at under 8. If it's a 5-point deficit, he acts and he's so cool, calm, and collective. They know how to manage games tight. It's why, he's the difference maker to me. And look, their offensive numbers are really good, and they're the definition of a team that he can change the way he plays every year. Like last year, they were pounding it inside. This year, they're 5 out. He just finds ways. He's a magician. So they're going to make a run. They'll make a deep run.
Coach, Alabama, the number 1 overall seed, Houston, Purdue, Kansas, the other 3 seeds. Do you feel like Alabama's the clear-cut number 1? And if not, who do you like amongst those top number 1 seeds the best?
It's funny. Alabama went to Oklahoma and lost by 30. Since that game, they've been on just a great run. All the distractions around the program. They're a team that, they're built. I mean, they just look, they feel when you watch them like, man, this team keeps coming at you. So I think Alabama's a Final Four team. I think UCLA with the injuries, I just worry, those 2 kids where, one of them's out for the season. The UCLA, to me, they're a team that really, if they were healthy, they were going to be my pick, but the injuries late just hurt them.
All right, we need to talk about you. We know what you did at Hartford. We know that you've been watching a lot of games and not been able to coach. You stepped away because of what the administration at Hartford decided to do, which was very controversial. You mentioned that maybe in the next 3 weeks you might have somewhere. Are you? Can you at least confirm that you're going to get back in the game for the upcoming season?
I will be back in the game. I don't know where I'll be, if it's a head coach or a top assistant at a high major program, but I'll be back. I just miss it too much. It's a part of my DNA. I watched, as I said, probably 10 games a day. There's so much that's great about this game. This is the best time of year. The next 3 weeks are just so great. But I will be back. I'm interviewing for a few jobs, and as we speak, so keep your fingers crossed.
Do you coach people up doing other things just to get your itch?
I coach the coaches now.
Mm.
Whether it's I watch a ton. I spend a lot of time with Porter, and look, it's a different game now at that level, and that's it. Like what I mean by that is with the transfer portal, with the name, image, and likeness, it's fluid. You have to be fluid. You have to be an unbelievable leader. You have to be an unbelievable communicator. The issues that you're going to deal with in college athletics over the next 10 years, we've never seen before. You know, I mean, you know, especially in football. I mean, football is going to be a whole different, because, you know, what if one offensive lineman is getting paid more than another offensive lineman? We're in a whole different world, fellas. But at the end of the day, college football, college basketball, it's a brand. People love it. And it's still a game. It's still teamwork. It's still love. It's still, you have to be passionate. You have to be a great teammate no matter what happens. Nothing changes in that aspect. Coaching's coaching. It's just how you handle the distractions.
Man, we love you, Coach. Appreciate it. I can't wait for you to, whenever that's announced, whatever your next role will be as a coach in basketball, whoever it's with, head coach or, again, assistant, we will wish you the absolute best. We will always follow you, and we appreciate your time. And if you don't mind, maybe after the first or second weekend or whatever, we get you back on.
I'm back on next week, man. Let's do it again next week. We'll analyze some games. And no one got hurt worse than A&M and the Longhorns. That should be a second weekend game. There's no way that should be a first weekend game. That's
There's
what I thought of it.
A lot of people who believe that was almost sinister in a way, the way they put that together. Some college bowl games never did for like the last 10 years, but the NCAA said, no, let's do it. Thanks for your time, Coach. Appreciate it. Good luck with all what's going on with you.
Thanks, fellas. Appreciate you.
John Gallagher, former head coach at Hartford, joined the show the week before they played Baylor 3 years ago. Was it 3 years ago? 2 years ago. 2 years ago. And then Baylor beat them up. It was 21 seasons. It was 21 tournament. It would be 3 tournaments ago, I guess, including this one. But, man, he eventually came on with us every week all the way through, even the day of the championship game, Baylor and Gonzaga.
Yeah, there's someone, like, you got to get that guy coaching. You know, I'm sure it's fine watching 10 basketball games a day when you can, but you can tell, like, the itch is there for him.
Reminds me of Matt Rule.
Yeah.
When Matt Rule was off on the sidelines there for a little while towards the end of football season, and I think he joined us, like, initially after that, and was, like, just basically watching a lot of football or, you know, perusing through a lot of different, you know, college football storylines and games and whatnot. That kind of reminds me of that, just biding your time, preparing for your return, so to speak.
I agree.
Yeah.
I was going to ask him one more, but what did he do the most that he had not had time to do before without coaching? Like, was there something he had to pick up as a hobby? Was there something he did?
I mean, you know, he got to watch other teams play when he didn't have to, you know, just recreationally. But, you know, I've heard, like, okay, Mike McCarthy spent that year off, you know, and he was probably maybe deeper into it than anybody else. He had guys like Jim Haslett and those guys coming up to his house, and they were just doing game plans for different teams so that when they all interviewed for jobs, they had, like, you know, because he said, like, part of the reason he blew Jerry Jones away is, you know, it was kind of rumored that the Cowboys would be open. So he got all those guys together and said, okay, well, here's my game plan for this offense and this team right now. And just walked in with Jerry's like, here's what I would have done. Which I don't know how many coaches do that or thought of that, but Mike McCarthy had to do something, you know. And, yeah, you got to, you know, you get a longer vacation with your family and do those things and spend that time. But ultimately, if you're not happy and productive outside of that, you're no good to anybody. You know, if you're not ready to be, you know, I can speak to this just in my normal life. My dad, you know, the company kind of made him retire, you know, because he was getting older and, you know, he was making really good money. So they gave him a great retirement package. It took about 5 years and 2 heart attacks before he realized, like, oh, I'm actually retired, you know. And then he said, oh, yeah, he said he had, it was funny. He said, I have rectal blindness when it comes to work because I can never see my ass going back there. So, like, when you get to that point, it's different. But if you can still see yourself doing it, if you've not, like, immersed yourself in it, you've got to go do it because you're not good to anybody if you're not, you know?
Yeah, it's interesting. Some people just can't retire, and some people can, and it just maybe depends on what you have when you do. Whether you can just stop and relax and enjoy life.
Well, I don't think he was making retirement money at Hartford at his age.
No.
He's still a young guy with a lot out there. And, yeah, I mean, I doubt that. He's totally. I mean, I'm sure the break has been nice. It kind of reminds me of like COVID, when everybody got a chance to, like, probably for the first time ever in their lives, like, actually not have to do anything there for a little while. And it's like, did you take full advantage of that time, or do you regret that now? Because I do think there are people that probably regret it, like the entire year that you had to basically, if you wanted to press reset on your entire life, you could have. You know what I mean? And a lot of people did, and others maybe didn't use that time as wisely. So hopefully he's had, I'm sure he's had enough time at this point, but hopefully he's used it wisely, because you don't want to have that opportunity occur again too soon, and you want to take full advantage of this next opportunity, because there's definitely one coming for him.
He is friends with Porter Moser, so at least for a year we might be able to get him in the Big 12.
Should have asked about that. Yeah. Should have asked about Porter Moser. When he first mentioned his name, I thought too. But yeah, you're right. I mean, that's possible, but would have. And maybe he wouldn't have said a whole lot because that's his buddy, and they struggled so mightily. But I remember when we talked to him about Moser getting that job shortly after, and he was very high on that. And look, he could still turn it around. But yeah, this year was not great for the Sooners.
So on my Twitter feed, I got a note from Alex Frank. In the bracket predictor, Baylor and UC Santa Barbara, there are 10 analytical rankings, right? Values, whatever. UC Santa Barbara is ranked higher in 6 of them. 4 of the 5 defensive rankings. That's who Baylor is. That's why they also were up and down. When they won, 10 of 11, including the game against Arkansas, they just punished people with their offense.
You're basically picking Baylor to have a great game offensively or not. I mean, that's that's basically what you're doing. Am I right?
Yes.
You think they're going to have? If you think they got the firepower offensively, they're going to have it. Then pick them to move on in the first round. If you don't, then don't, and that's fine too. I mean, even as a 3 seed, if you predicted them to get upset in the first round, I don't think you're all that crazy. I mean, because those upset picks have to come from somewhere. And look, they're there for the taking. No matter if they're a 3 seed or not, they are very one-sided, lopsided, and if they're not shooting well and putting up buckets, then they're not long for this world. So that's why you see I believe there's on Evan Miyakawa's percentage. I think they got a pretty strong percentage to get to the second round, but beyond that, I don't know how strong it really is. I think there's a pretty big drop-off.
Baylor's numbers, 82.4% to get to the round of 32, and then 43% to get to the Sweet 16.
Yeah.
And Creighton, who's in the same region, actually slightly lower at 40.8%. Arizona, 74% in that same region. So, yeah, it drops
feast or
dramatically.
famine, man.
Yeah, and it is. And when you rely on the 3, you could die by the 3 if you don't have all the other things around you to be able to, 1, stop things inside, transition defense. Scott Drew's been harping on that. The rebounding deficiency against Oklahoma State was unheard of, absolutely unheard of. And then the fact that they're just it's hard for Baylor to score if they don't shoot the ball well. And I know shooting the ball from 3, if you do it well enough, overcomes whatever you might not get inside. This is 365 Sports.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive and North 19th Street in Waco. The best selection of local Texas bourbons. The best selection of craft beers. I could just end the spot right there, because that's true. It is springtime. They're rotating those beers in, new beers. There's also new whiskeys always available in the spring. So anytime there's a new anything, they bring it in. They add it to their roster of products there. They've got great selection of everything, but those 2 things, they are really head and shoulders above everyone else when it comes to it. Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive and North 19th Street behind the bank. Great Instagram account that shows all their great promotions. They're available on DoorDash. Their customer service is second to none, and the drive-thru window moves so fast you won't even know you were in it. That's right. You'll just be like, did I just get a bottle of whiskey here through a drive-thru window? Yes, it took about 7 seconds. That's how fast they move at Riverbend Liquor and Wine. Lakeshore Drive and North 19th Street behind the bank, also available on DoorDash.
Cars priced right, both day and night. At Richard Car in Texas. Trucks built for you, red, white, and blue. At Richard Car in Texas. Cars that zoom with lots of room. At Richard Car in Texas. Count on us, a dealer to trust. Have Richard Carr in Waco, Texas.
Automatic Chef Canteen is a full-service micro-market vending and office coffee provider with state-of-the-art vending equipment, a wide variety of products, and offering custom-fitted micro-market vending office coffee solutions for your employee break room. You want a full break room solution and a workplace oasis? Well, Automatic Chef Canteen, locally owned and operated for over 50 years in Central Texas, also includes in-house mechanics on call 24/7 for fast, reliable service and maintenance. Automatic Chef Canteen, 6900 Imperial Drive in Waco, or online at automaticchefcanteen.com.
After my first car accident, I feared the biggest damage would be to my wallet. I expected a mountain of bills and a long, drawn-out process. But my Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent was there when I needed her and helped me get back on my feet and in my car in no time. Instead of a hassle, I got reassurance and a quick recovery.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Waco Custom Marketplace is your hometown grocery store with a full-service butcher shop and bakery. Hi, this is David Smoak. The butcher shop can take your customized orders for seafood, pork, and poultry and custom cut your favorite steaks from bacon wrap fillets to T-bone to bone-in ribeyes, cut specifically the way you want. They have Norwegian salmon fillets, catfish fillets, sliced ham or turkey and lunch meat, variety of cheese available, and several options of sausage links, fresh chicken breast or whole chickens, sliced bacon, pork chops, ground beef, marinated beef, and chicken fajitas, and always large briskets available, plus fresh vegetables. So the great product, customer service, and family tradition of the Bauer family continues at Waco Custom Marketplace, open Monday through Saturday. A full-service butcher shop and bakery available. Waco Custom Marketplace, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco, or WacoCustomMarketplace.com.
In the market for a quality metal building? Since 1943, Pioneer Steel & Pipe has helped Central Texas residential and commercial customers with metal building design, panel options, building components, and trim options. Pioneer Steel & Pipe's residential line is energy efficient, offers low maintenance, reduces insurance payments, is impact resistant, and carries up to a 45-year limited warranty. In addition, they can also help you find a metal building contractor for your project. Pioneer Steel & Pipe with locations in Waco and Bryan and at pioneersboys.com.
TFNB Your Bank for Life is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texas are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB Your Bank for Life. Member FDIC.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 4 o'clock hour is sponsored by Boozer's Jewelers, the wedding ring store, specializing in custom jewelry and repair, all in-house.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
Bobby B., Baylor fan, was saying that I think Coach is being pretty generous with his thoughts about Baylor. He did mention they could go deep. I think that, yeah, if they get on a hot streak and play like they did when they won 10 of 11, they can go real deep. But, you know.
Well, when they won the national,
who are they?
When they won the national championship, if they scored 70 points, they were going to beat you by 10. I mean, they just were. So now, if they score 70 points, they might lose by 10. So it's a little bit different. So they've got to score. If Baylor can score 80 points a night, they're gonna make a deep run. But are they going to run up against a team that doesn't allow you to score 80 points a night? So, and if they're in that 75-point range, then you're going to white knuckle it down the stretch, because that's just the way this team is. They don't play that kind of defense. But yeah, I mean we had the text chain going on that year. I wish I could have saved most of them. I could probably go back and find it, in the saved stuff, but you'd hit the point of like, they're at 68 right now. Yep. Next bucket wins it, and there's 9 minutes left in the game. And you're like, oh well, it's over, because they're not going to let you get They didn't let teams that year get to 70, 75 points. Just didn't happen. So
their losses
this is
this
different.
year. 86 to Virginia. They lost. They gave up 86. They scored 79. What did you say about 80? I don't even know the answer here. Marquette scored 96.
Yeah.
They scored 70. They got blown out of that game. Iowa State beat them 77-62. 2 games in a row that were fantastic. Lost by 1 and 2 at home. 88-87, 97-95. Like, I'm thinking about, is this Paul Westhead and Loyola Marymount type of stuff with the scores we see? And then they went on their great run, lost to Texas and Austin 76-71. That was a fairly decent score. 87 to Kansas they gave up. 75 to K-State. Let's see, they beat 73-58. And they haven't been given up quite as much, but
if they get to 80,
then they probably have 5 less losses.
Yeah, they're okay. But if you're in the 70s, then, that's how they are. So,
yeah, so there they are with that. Hey, I spoke with Jim Williams. He's a consultant, part of some of the media deals over the last several years. He's reached out to me on a direct message on Twitter, listens to us out of Washington, D.C., and I spoke with him for a little bit. Here are a couple of notes. Now, this has nothing to do with what may happen, but just some of the ideas he bounced off of me the last couple of days when it comes to the college football and media and TV and the Pac-12 and Amazon and Apple and all that. So, and he's going to write an article about some of this in Forbes. I think it might even be this week. So the University of Washington, for example, has fed or has around 17,000 employees that they have fed to Amazon.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's located where?
In Seattle.
Okay. So if you're the University of Washington president and you have a place that is like basically you're a farm system for one of the greatest massive companies in the world, right?
Yeah.
And they want to do a deal with you when it comes to streaming if it ends up being them. Because it's what, Apple, Amazon, whoever. You want to piss them off? If they said, hey, we want you to be a part of the Pac-12 and we want to have, isn't that at least part of the conversation?
Okay, well, normally I would say yes. But if you've been following Amazon and how they care about their employees over the last few years, I don't think Jeff Bezos gives an F about what they think about anything.
All right.
Yeah, but are we talking? I don't think that applies the same to upper level employees versus the dude who's packing your shampoo.
But 17,000, some of those are not up. They're not all upper level employees. So again, I think if there's some big higher level UW people on the board, then yeah, sure, probably it's the same way that works for probably Stanford and Cal and anybody else who's peppered throughout Apple. That are there. So, yeah, I'm sure there are some people that would push for that. Just like if you go back to the founding of ESPN. What was ESPN at the beginning was a bunch of UConn grads, right? With people who are from Connecticut. That's why it's in Connecticut, is because there are a bunch of UConn people. So, at the beginning of ESPN, their sports were a lot of stuff that people like in Connecticut. And then when they started to go national, they're like, well, or more and more people started picking it up. They're like, well, we should probably do a little less hockey, because it's not as popular in Florida or Georgia or, Texas, and do more of this so that we can get the rights to as they grew and grew and grew.
They also were growing during the Big East in their amazing run, so it was going to include some of those schools anyway. All right, so here's a couple other things he mentioned. And this is something that when you read articles, whether it's from someone who's reporting how the Pac-12 might look or how those involved may look as far as who's going to pay for the money, who's going to end up feeding the beast, so to speak, in the Pac-12, whatever that might be. So if you're, what's the guy who's the Arizona head coach? Tommy Lloyd, came from Gonzaga, won the Pac-12 title. So if your president says, man, hey, listen, we're going to get all this money and we're going to get a nice chunk of money and we're going to not be on linear TV very much. The AD or the men's basketball coach or the football coach, no matter what kind of money it might be, are they not going to say, yes, but can my guys find it? Can my recruits or who I'm trying to recruit, can they find it?
The recruits can. The parents might not be able to. the viewers, the alums might not be able to, or it might not be as convenient. So
because of the lack of education towards streaming.
Yeah, and the fact that, like, while it's pretty cool, like, streaming is ultimately the biggest convenience in the world for a lot of viewing. Like, look, if I want to watch any movie ever, I mean, I can pretty much just go. I don't even have to now. You have remotes where I can just be like Rocky 3, and then Alexa will pop up and she'll tell me all the different ways I can watch Rocky 3. Occasionally there's something that's not on streaming because of weird, complicated rights issues that no one will ever understand, even the people who have those rights. But, you know, I can either watch Rocky 3 on something I've subscribed to, I can buy Rocky 3, I can rent Rocky 3, and I don't have to move. Like, I literally only have to say audibly what I wanted to watch. And so while that's convenient, it's not the same as sports-wise, so it's a little bit harder to navigate that. Now, I'm sure technology will catch up to it. I mean, you can write 50 term papers on ChatGPT now. I'm sure that same kind of technology would be applied to streaming where it just makes it easy for you to get what you want. But, you know, yeah, in the short term, it's probably not an easy thing for most of your viewing public.
I just think that live sports is a cable deal, man. Like, that's just what I keep coming back to. Like, I understand streaming's the future and streaming's this and streaming's that, and I understand that 5 years or 10 years from now that, you know, that all of us will be all streaming all the time. But as of right now, for me, and I know I don't speak for everybody by any means, I'm not a cord cutter, so there's a lot of people that are like, I'm already beyond that. I'm on to stage 2. I got, you know, YouTube TV or whatever. I get that others have done that, but for me, if I'm flipping between the Michigan game and the Texas game and the Oklahoma game, and I'm doing that on cable. I'm not doing that hopping from ESPN Plus to the Fox app to the, you know, going back to my main splash page on Roku to then flip over to the you know, the NBC Universal or Peacock to watch Notre Dame. I'm going channel 8 to channel 12 to channel 22, and that's what I'm doing, and I'm not having to skip and hop around. That's the main point of it. That's the main argument that people have with streaming. It's not that we're incapable of figuring it out. It's not that if you're 50 plus, you have no chance of ever learning it. I mean, I think it's as much being stubborn as just not being able to learn it sometimes, and there is a little bit of an age gap as far as technology goes. Like, I told Jack one time, like, Jack and them have been taught so differently than what I was taught. Like, we're pretty far apart, you know, age-wise, and so that makes sense. But, like, some of the stuff that's just, like, layup technology questions for somebody that's 22 or 23. What are you, Jack, 21? Okay, whatever, 21.
I think he's 23.
Okay, 23 is massively different than somebody, like, even in their 30s because so much has changed. So that's understandable, but I'm still not convinced that as of right now and for the immediate future – that live sports and cable aren't the better pairing overall.
Oh, there's no question. Like, even for someone like me, there's
so that's
no
for me,
doubt about
when I hear the streaming piece, I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. And in the future, that could be really great, and that makes a ton of sense. But right now, and in the immediate future, you're going to have to convince me that that's going away from cable to begin with. And if anything, if it weren't for that whole streaming part with the Pac-12 negotiations to begin with, that there wouldn't even be that much controversy. That's the that's the thing that's bigger than, and almost the money part of it. And if it's not bigger, then it's equal to, okay, well, it's the money plus the streaming that gives you this combustible conversation of like, oh, God, what road are they headed down? Because it's one thing if the money's similar, but you don't have the amount of exposure. And then if they're both not that great, well, then that is something that you go, okay, well, could that possibly make somebody go, my future's not really great here? And that's where this whole conversation stems from. Is just what are they going to be able to land? So yeah, I'm still convinced that the cable is the right now and the foreseeable future. But I do understand those that argue about streaming and how prominent that will be. I wonder how far away we are from that still being, you know, like the ESPN idea we were talking about the other day, where they wanted to make it all in one, all encompassing, where there was one page for everything. We're not close to that yet. Like, that wasn't an idea that they were telling you is a couple years away. That's an idea that they are bandying about and researching and don't appear to be anywhere close to, because the agreements themselves are going to take some time to sort out. So, yeah, I mean, I still side with cable, but yes, for an Amazon, for the Pac-12, it does make a lot of sense as far as the future and what their options might be.
One of the things that when I was talking to Jim about certain of those universities, and again, it could be the youth and the age, as Craig was mentioning as well, is that like Apple has how many devices? As many as you want?
Yeah. I mean, like, again, if you were to put something on Apple, and look, Apple, I made the joke a few weeks ago about U2. They just, one day we all woke up and we had a free U2 album. Apple can do that. Like, one day you're going to wake up in the morning and they could put the Pac-12 everywhere, but just like the U2 album, they foolishly assumed that everyone liked U2. Like, if you didn't grow up and hear Sunday Bloody Sunday, you probably couldn't have cared less about it and be like, I'm more of a Lady Gaga person. I don't know why I've got this free U2 album that I now can't delete. Same thing with the Pac-12. They can put it on Apple TV Plus, and it's already on. It'll be on everything before. Same with Amazon and their Fire, TVs and Fire tablets and everything that they have. They can put it on all over the place. So yeah, it's certainly something that makes it convenient and available. But are people going to go to that? I think the Pac-12, and if you look at the way that the networks were set up before, Larry Scott set it up, and Larry Scott deserves, kind of all the smoke that he gets when it comes to all the mistakes that he made. The idea that he had for the Pac-12 to own the networks
was good.
It was a great idea. It was just far too early for its time and didn't have the carriage. They couldn't get DirecTV, so it just cratered, and then they never kind of amended what they were going to do and just kept on with that plan. With going mostly streaming, that is probably the way of the future, but since it's not the way of the now, are you too far ahead of the curve? Are you the Jimmy Carter of conferences where, we're not even to the point now where Jimmy Carter would be a good president, but like in 2050, Jimmy Carter might have been the right guy because he was so smart and so good, but when he was elected president, we weren't ready for him.
All right, so
he was smarter than all of us.
Presidents look at dollars, right?
Yeah.
And they also look at who scratches their itch, right?
Yeah.
So what do ADs and coaches look at? They look at how can we get better?
Yeah, how can we win?
How can we win?
Mm-hmm.
And so it would be interesting if you could ever get a conversation about what the conversations are between the presidents, those in the athletic department, the ADs, and others. Jim also brought this up, and I believe this was mentioned before, but who has the MLS deal?
Apple.
Apple has MLS, right? So they get 15 games are on Fox. And then all the other things are on Apple. Is there any room for the Pac-12 to do that? To where all the games are because Fox is, we've been told, now whether or not someone can call it as Eric Shanks and say, hey, we'd like to visit with you again. But really, there's only the one night time spot open on Saturday, and then there's a possibility of a late night spot on Friday. Would you stream one night, and then ESPN does the other one, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's not really that complicated. It's just, they would do it. I mean, it all depends on what their deal is. I mean, are they Apple streaming alone? Are they Apple and Amazon? Are they Apple, Amazon, and Vudu or whatever? Tubi? I mean, like, we have no idea what they're debating. But I mean, I've always thought, like, if you do mostly ESPN streaming and then you have like your Friday night game of the week on Apple, that seems like it would probably work out pretty well for you. And then you have the late time zone on ESPN that would normally be yours. But I know that there's people that are far more into the weeds on like the TV, times and all of that stuff that can get it exactly. But I've always thought that seems like their best bet is to have a high-profile Friday game. But what's high-profile too? Also, like,
right.
I mean, how many matchups can you theoretically have between Oregon, USC? Like, I mean, you can only do that, Oregon, USC, Oregon, Utah, USC. How many of those do you have to go 15, 16 weeks if you need to? But yeah, I mean, I think it's always kind of been explained that they'll do streaming. And whether or not that's the majority has been, again, the big question and the big talking point. Whereas the other piece of this is, okay, whatever doesn't end up on streaming is going to end up on ESPN, and we have no idea what that is until we know what the streaming piece is and what the focus is there. But yeah, they're they're not on Fox. I mean, Fox isn't.
It doesn't seem like they're interested unless
unless there's something behind the scenes. Yeah.
And look, there is. I mean, if Apple and Emma, if they're all streaming together, because ESPN is going to be streaming some Pac-12 games. You know that they're going to put some of that on ESPN Plus. Otherwise, it does them no good. But
same with the Big 12's deal, though.
But But see, that's what's great about the Big 12's deal is like you have. Well, at least convenient. It's 2 spots to go. It's ESPN or Fox. And if you add another spot, like that might be good for money, but does it add like another thing that's going to hurt your ratings overall because people aren't going to get that third service?
Fox does not have streaming.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, they do.
What do they have?
Fox Sports Go.
I didn't even know that.
Just, yeah, well.
Is it ESPN Plus for them?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, we watch it in here all the time.
Everybody has streaming.
Yeah.
At this point. Okay. Everybody has, I mean, you know, it might not be the TNT app. It's WB, what is it? Warner Brothers Discovery. Which
I guess they would. Yeah, they're on HBO Max, right? Yeah. So yeah, that's what they are now.
Yeah. So I mean, everybody's got some type of network that they're streaming into.
It's just and one of the other things he brought up. Okay, now do all of this, and let's say everything works out. Everybody moves forward with these new TV deals, and let's say the Pac-12, whatever happens, it works, and then all of a sudden. He was talking about Andy Zimbalist, who's got a story. Do you realize that, and we do because of the O'Bannon case and the other ones, that how many lawsuits could pop at any moment that could lead to pay for play?
Oh, yeah.
And then how many...
That's what's going to create the Super League.
There you go.
I don't know if you... I mean, ESPN has an article about this today. They have a little round table. It doesn't reveal any information whatsoever. It's all just opinions. But it's like, 3 or 4 of their staff writers all sitting around debating realignment topics.
Mm-hmm.
So, they're discussing the same things that we are and banning about the same ideas that we are. But yeah, that's what's eventually going to probably be the straw that breaks the camel's back for some programs is once we get into pay for play, which is pretty much inevitable. Or no, we're already in pay for play. What am I talking about?
Yeah, we are.
Once we get into clear pay for play where we're not even trying to pretend this is NIL anymore. Like this is just everybody's an employee and everybody's getting regular employment status. There will be a further separation than there is now. And the belief, for some is that there's only 2 leagues really that will be able to swing that. But I don't think anybody's of the belief that means there's only going to be 2 leagues standing. It's just going to be, a giant gulf between them and everybody else. That's just growing larger and larger because of the money difference and the fact that, there's not going to be a bunch of teams. Not everybody's going to be able to sign up and pay people like employees, pay athletes like employees. And so, I think that's what everybody's watching right now is that in particular, more than anything else really is how long can they hold on until that inevitably happens and that shoe drops. And I think that's what a lot of schools are preparing for right now is how to prepare. And that's probably worth asking Mack Rhodes tomorrow. If we have him, are they preparing for the idea of, what if athletes become employees? Because, that doesn't seem like it's too far away at all. And as a matter of fact, it seems like a lot of people are talking that up as though that's inevitable and are already preparing to get all their ducks in a row for that.
Jim Williams, who contacted me on Twitter, just a couple of notes from what he said, by the way. He's in D.C., he was a part of Home Sports Entertainment. Paul, were you ever around when there was HSE?
Yeah.
HSE.
Yeah.
It then became, I believe, Fox Sports Southwest, or maybe whatever.
I think it was a couple
that.
other things, before
and now
that.
It's Bally, or whatever they are now.
It might be something else, too, because their the regional sports networks are
Fox Sports Southwest,
bankrupt.
yeah. And I remember my days doing the Astros, Rockets, Rangers, Spurs, Mavericks, boxing. I loved the old Southwest Conference and the battles back in the day. He'd been in business kind of in the broadcasting as a director, producer, and then eventually involved in some of these deals. 45 years. I was involved in the 2010 Big East ACC war as I watched Larry Smith came close to getting Texas, Texas Tech, Oklahoma State to the Pac-12. John Skipper, of course, then launched the Longhorn Network that allowed the Big 12 to remain intact. He knows Bob Thompson. He's watched some of our segments with Bob Thompson. He's writing now. I think it's not just Forbes, but also maybe with the Sports Business Journal as well, and just loves the show. He said that We'll keep good work. Tell my best to Craig and Paul. I just wanted to touch base and say I enjoy you guys in your work.
Oh, thank you very much, Jim. Appreciate that quite a bit. Yeah, it is, and look, the sports is now just getting to the point. Like, streaming was never, when it was conceptualized, like, sports was the kind of the second tier of it. It was how much, can we get you to sit here and watch 25 episodes of one show in a row and get you locked into this app, which sports, while you can sit all day and watch sports, it was never just part of that because of just the nature of the beast. So, when it comes down to streaming, they're still finding their way with sports and what makes the most sense.
Yeah, I know this has been an aggravating time for Pac-12 fans, and there's been a lot of headbutting, Big 12, Pac-12, and all that stuff, and who knows how this all plays out. I'll say for the 100th time, I've always and continue to expect the Pac-12 to land some type of deal that keeps them satisfied. I've not wavered on that, and I still think that's where we're headed. But who the heck knows, if they don't get the offer that they're looking for. I understand the reason why there's all sorts of, talk and just daydreaming and just scuttlebutt and whatever about, fantasy booking about what, the fallout could look like. And people on the Pac-12 side have to understand that's because it's fun to think about. Like, it's nothing. It's no ill will. It's not, we hope you die. I know there are some fans that say otherwise, and they feel how they feel. But I think for the majority of people, realignment's not just suddenly fascinating because the Pac-12's, on a breather. It's been fascinating for all of college football's existence. It's something that everybody swarms to whenever a new story comes up because it's an interesting topic. And so that's why it's nearly a year-round rumor mill at this point, thanks to Oklahoma and Texas a couple years back. But let's not act like they started this ball. College football's history is one of realignment. This is not new. This is not exclusive. This is not anything but just a very interesting topic that's interesting again because there happens to be another interesting storyline. And I've seen a couple of times of like, well, why is the Pac-12 being talked about? We didn't talk about the SEC TV deal. I don't remember talking about this TV deal. Let me put it to you very clearly. What was there to talk about the SEC TV deal other than the gobs and gobs of money? The conversation there was how much money were they going to get, not where they were going to end up per se. I mean, although that was a question, like where could all they end up? Could they dominate the entire – but we weren't worried about the SEC getting to a certain figure. We were wondering how far past whatever figure we had in our minds they were going to blow past. We weren't wondering what channel, streaming or linear, they might end up on. We were wondering how many channels they were going to end up on. So there was no reason to bat an eye at the SEC TV deal. The Big 12, go ahead.
Well, and then juxtapose that to the Big 10 is how...
That's what I'm going to get to.
Yeah, is how Kevin Warren spun 3 good football programs into, a deal that's better.
Yeah, but the Big Ten, the question wasn't, is the Big Ten going to survive or not? The Big Ten was adding USC and UCLA and then negotiating their TV deal while their commissioner threatened expansion all over the rest of college football by not declaring it over and by leaving the door completely wide open like the biggest troll and puppet master known to man. He did that. You created an alliance with him. He screwed you over, and you're still more mad at the Big 12 than you're mad at Kevin Warren. Like, that's crazy. We didn't talk about the Big Ten TV deal the same way because it wasn't a matter of how much money they're going to get. It's like we knew they were getting gobs of money. We knew they were going to – our question was how many of Fox, CBS, ESPN, all of that would they end up on? And when it was all said and done, they ended up with the biggest deal ever. And that was a wide talking point, but it was a different kind of conversation because they were never under any threat. There was no poaching that was going to be done other than them being the ones that poached. So both of those examples, that's why it's wildly different. The Big 12 TV deal, that happened so damn quickly. We didn't talk about it because they weren't supposed to have it. There wasn't anything to talk about. They expanded, and then they were supposed to wait until, another year from now before they even entered TV negotiations. So why would we talk about a deal that wasn't even in the works until Brett Yormark and company, whoever it was, maybe one of the school presidents, maybe an AD, decided to say, hey, let's jump out in front, which turned out to be what appears to be a pretty brilliant idea. We'll see once the Pac TV deal comes into play. But there was nothing to talk about because it happened seemingly overnight and it came unexpected. And the ACC TV deal, we've talked about it at great length, especially here recently, because it's the huge talking point that keeps everything from basically dissolving and falling apart if you think of the doomsday scenarios, because it's the only thing preventing schools from pulling a USC or UCLA or Oklahoma and Texas is this godforsaken long agreement that the ACC made years ago. So we still talked about their TV deal despite the fact it doesn't come up for another decade. So that's the difference. And I don't think that that's hard to figure out. There's a massive difference in those 4 conferences and the way their TV deals were negotiated. A couple of them never under any threat of losing out on TV space whatsoever. It was a matter of how much they were going to leave for everybody else. One swooped in, so there was just an overnight just grabbing of TV rights, and one's been done for like 10 years and has another 10 to go. So that's why the Pac-12 is unique, is because it is losing 2 big brands. It hasn't gone and added BYU, Cincinnati, UCF. It didn't jump in line and grab a TV deal. It's just gone by its timeline, and as a result of doing that, it's found itself in a more unique situation where it is pretty stable, but not to the point to where it's a non-story. And I think that that's as best as I can explain why it feels like the Pac-12 has been picked on.
You've said a lot with that and explained it. And one of the things is that one of the other parts of this story, as somebody say, hey, this one guy says you guys always are talking about the Pac-12. It's the biggest story right now in college athletics, other than the tournament, because of what they're waiting on and because of the space available for them to be able to be on television. That's why, and how it could affect the future of not only their conference, but others, and maybe even some schools being able to move into a so-called Autonomy 5 type conference if it works out. This is 365 Sports. PettyClinicLowT.com, Dr. Kent Petty can help you become the high-performance man that you want to be, used to be, and need to be. And what I mean by that is your body, as you get older, Father Time starts to take your testosterone level. It starts to drop. Not everybody, 1 out of every 3 men. So someone out there, I'm talking to you, you know it. Your energy's not the same. The sex drive is not the same. You're not able to perform when in the bedroom the same. There's a lot missing. You know it. And there's nothing wrong with admitting it, or at least knowing you have it, because, I mean, it's your life, right? Dr. Kent Petty can do a couple of things for you. Set up for you to get an appointment to get your blood work. Look at your testosterone levels. And if your testosterone levels are too low, he can put you in a program to increase your testosterone levels so you can become the high-performance man you want to be, need to be, and used to be at PettyClinicLowT.com.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Niche Group Insurance Agency. With the Niche Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Niche Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Niche Group at 1-800-258-8302.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive, North 19th Street, right behind the bank, is a hidden gem in Waco. If you're a fan of bourbon, especially local Texas bourbons, that's where you gotta go. Balcones, TX, Devil's River, whatever it is, they've got it. Riverbend Liquor and Wine, plus the best selection of craft beers in Waco, seasonally churned out throughout the year. Whether it's spring, summer, fall, or winter, Riverbend Liquor and Wine, best selection of craft beers, a speedy drive-through window, and excellent customer service. Find out more on Instagram or just go by and see them. Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street behind the bank.
How did Edward Jones become one of the biggest financial service companies in the world? By not acting that way. Financial strategies, one-on-one advice, it's a big difference. And that's why Brad Wilson, your Edward Jones financial advisor, makes sense of investing. Experience the difference for yourself. Brad Wilson, 250 Sharon Drive in Woodway, 254-776-4337. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
Don Humidor, your home with a 48-foot walk-in humidor with the elite cigar brands from around the world, including the #1 cigar of the year, Aging Room Cuatro Nicaragua. Plus, they have the great brands like Macanudo and Artur Fuente, Rocky Patel, Aston, and so much more. CBD, great for sore muscles, aches and pains, sleep, Vita Dreams, and anxiety, mild depression, general health and wellness. Their staff very knowledgeable on the subject. If anyone is curious about CBD, ask Carol and Ashley. Don Humidor in the Townwest Shopping Center off Valley Mills in Waco.
Shorty's Pizza Shack at 12th and Bagby is a homegrown, locally owned pizza place that's out of this world. Everything from the dough, the sauce, the sausage topping is made fresh in-house. Not to mention the amazing pizza pillows, the chicken wings are to die for. Try the Sikkim sauce, chili cheese fries or tots, plus great specials on food and drink every single day. Shorty's is also the perfect spot to watch the game with your friends. Shorty's Pizza Shack at 12th and Bagby. Tell them Paul sent you by.
Boozers is the wedding ring store and more. If you're ready to get engaged or already married and want to upgrade your wife's ring for a special anniversary, Boozers is the place to go. With the largest selection of premier quality diamond engagement rings and wedding rings in Central Texas. They have 7 cases with over 300 styles of rings from top designers like Natalie Kay. Choose from yellow, white, or rose gold, plus beautiful top quality loose diamonds. With an in-house jewelry, they can also custom make anything you want. Bring in a picture or drawing and let Boozers create your one-of-a-kind pendant or ring. They can even use some of your old gold and diamond jewelry to create something new. At Boozers, you'll find a great selection of quality timepieces, and Boozers is the place for expert watch maintenance and repairs too. They specialize in expert Rolex watch repair for fine jewelry, watches, custom work, and more. Go to Boozers on Valley Mills and Lake Air Drive in Waco.
Boozers, the wedding ring store and more.
This is 365 Sports. Are you a Sikkim 365 superfan? Then try out our premium subscriptions at Sikkim365.com.
Voice of UC Santa Barbara Athletics, Max Kelton joins us on 365 Sports. The Gauchos play Baylor coming up on Friday in Denver. Paul Catalina, Craig Smoak, and David Smoak. Max, thanks you very much. Can you kind of give us just an overall summary about this particular year, this season of who Santa Barbara has been?
Well, anytime you're facing the number 14 seed, frankly, from a team like the Big 12, they don't know much about these teams. But let me make no mistake that UC Santa Barbara certainly has a winning culture. And that's clear this year with 6-year head coach Joe Pasternak. It's a record 27 wins for the Gauchos. They're led by A.J. Miller. He's a terrific offensive presence, the player of the year in the Big West. This is a young man who can score and close out games really well. I love the matchup between the Bears and UCSB. I'm really excited for it. And I think that the Gauchos, who have won all season, won their Big West tournament, are poised to maybe shock the world right here. And I appreciate you having me come on because I have a lot to talk about here when it comes to UCSB and this Baylor matchup and why it favors the Gauchos.
Okay, so defensively, obviously the Gauchos are a better team. Baylor has not – they're the worst team in the Big 12 on defense. But can they score with Baylor if those guards get hot?
That's the real question that everybody's asking, right? If the guards get hot, can UCSB keep up with Baylor? Well, let me give you this. The Baylor Bears have allowed over the last 15 games, 13 opponents to shoot over 45% from the field. Aside from that, one of those two, Oklahoma State, they're the worst field goal efficiency team in the Big 12, so I leave it at that. I feel that's an exception. So let's think about that. 13 of 14, aside from Oklahoma State, have shot over 45%. UC Santa Barbara is a terrific field goal efficiency team, especially on the offensive side. They're 8th in the country in field goal efficiency, field goal percentage. They're so good at developing a presence on the inside from 2-point land. That's got to be the key. And while the Bears are so good at knocking them down from 3, the Gauchos have to keep pace at finding that presence on the inside. So that's got to be a huge key for UCSB. And moving forward, they also have to be able to box out not only on the interior, but around the perimeter as well, because long shots create long rebounds. And for a Baylor team that shoots so many three-pointers, a lot of those long rebounds go out to the guards. So if the Gauchos can eliminate guards from creating offensive boards and then creating second chance opportunities, UCSB will be in a really good spot. And Joe Pasternak has consistently outcoached opponents all season long, and that's a big reason why the Gauchos are here with their best record in years and their most wins in program history. It's because this is a guy on one side of the chessboard who knows how to play the game and has learned from the best there is. He was a manager under Bobby Knight. He's coached under Sean Miller, and now he has led this program to new heights. And it's the second playoff berth, NCAA tournament berth over the last 3 years for UCSB in a very competitive Big West Conference.
What was I saw the video reaction when their name was called and they would be the 14th seed against Baylor. What were some things that just people around the program, that maybe even text messages that you were sharing with those who understand UC Santa Barbara, just the overall take initially?
Well, I think initially folks are excited that we're a 14 seed. I think some of them even expected to be maybe a 13, those that were more optimistic. But this is a team that, caught fire toward the end of the year, and in the middle of the season, they were on a win streak to open up the season where they had only lost one or two non-conference games, right? And then they started out conference play winning 8 or 9 straight. So this is a team that, once again, a winning culture, no doubt about it, and they're excited to show what they can do with the best. Now, when they pulled Baylor, it was funny. I was at the selection show. I had said to one of the assistant coaches, I said, I expect to get Baylor. I hadn't seen Lenardi post about it. I hadn't seen any of the others, but I expect to get Baylor, and frankly, that's the matchup that I wanted. A Baylor team that has somewhat struggled as of late, and, you look at this UCSB team, just how they match up statistics-wise. I really like where the Gauchos are. Now, the problem for UCSB as of late, you look at a 3-game skid in February, that had to do with injuries and depth. This is a team that started out the season as deep as ever, yet they dealt with injuries to a player like KK Tong. He's a freshman, 6'9" out of South Sudan. This is a young man who made more of an impact on the floor than he did on the stat sheet, and he was really crucial in the Gauchos' success, especially on the defensive side and rebounding side of the ball. So Baylor fans should be really excited that he was out for the season over the last 6 games. A guy like Ajari Sani might make his way back, however, and that adds some depth for UCSB in the backcourt because this is a team that, well, they're really good in the backcourt with this 6-man rotation. Sani is a player who can strike from outside, and the Gauchos would certainly utilize him around the perimeter from his 3-point shooting. He's a 3-and-D type of guy. So that said, UCSB has been scoring the ball at an elite rate, not just in the Gauchos, realm, but in the country as of late. You look at their last 6 games averaging near 85 points per game. And that says something to who this team is and what they can bring to the table. So when you ask, hey, can they keep pace with Baylor? You bet they can. They're one of the best scoring teams in the country. That said, though, I asked Joe Pasternak, I said, Joe, do you like this poll? What were your first thoughts? He said, we're focused on us. If we do what we do well, then we can compete with anybody. And I think that is the message in that locker room right now, that they can compete with anybody and they're ready to shock the country.
Is there a little bit of worry, though, that they haven't – I mean, if you look through the non-con schedule, they haven't really swam in these waters yet this year, though?
Absolutely. You're 100% right. And I think that the resume of wins is checked off a little bit because of their lack of terrific opponents. That they have not played against Big 12 opponents, and Baylor is in – let's face it, the best conference in the country, playing against the best teams in the country, with wins over a team like Texas, who I actually think is, a national champion favorite. I think that Baylor knows what it takes to play against the big dogs. But the real question is, who has more to lose? And a lot of the time, I think we consider, hey, is Baylor playing for its life or are they playing not to get upset? And UCSB right now is playing with its life on the line, and they can only win. Hey, if the Gauchos lose, then okay, a 14 seed was unable to pull it out. But if Baylor loses, there's significantly more pressure on the Bears moving into this, because if Baylor loses, they lose to a 14 seed, they're upset. And let's get this straight, by the way. The last 4 number 3 seeds to be upset in the first round have come from the Big 12. So while, yes, UCSB has not played a terrific non-conference schedule, just because the Baylor Bears have, that doesn't mean that they are not susceptible to being upset here in this first round.
That's a good stat on the 3 Big 12 teams.
Look, Max, we've both been there watching them do it. So, Baylor's not immune.
Yeah, and then one thing about Cal Santa Barbara is no quad 1 games, not less no wins or losses, but no quad 1 games. And sometimes it might be because nobody wants to put them on their schedule. So 2 years ago, when Baylor won the national title and hammered Gonzaga, early on in that bracket, and there's a possibility not to look past the game with Baylor, but didn't Creighton beat UC Santa Barbara by 1 in the opening round in 21?
You bet your booty. And I love that you bring that up. It twists a knife in my heart. You know, that was a really fun game because it came down to the wire, 63-62, and it was a missed shot that rolled off the rim from a guy like Amadou Sow, who's now playing overseas professionally in France. You know, this is a totally different team, that said. There is experience. There are players who have been to the tournament, but a lot of transfer guys, a lot of guys who have not been able to really taste what that 2021 team was like. The backcourt that year was a guy like Ja'Cory McLaughlin, who is now playing G League with the Warriors, and DeVeryl Ramsey, who is playing professionally as well overseas. I think he's in London. And that backcourt has moved on. And now it's a new backcourt for UC Santa Barbara, including a guy like A.J. Mitchell. Let's remember, this is a player of the year, and it's not because he's so good at scoring. It's because he commands the game. That's one thing that was so crucial in deciding that POY candidate this year, who is going to win basketball games. And A.J. Mitchell, late in games, listen, I've been covering this team for near 7-8 years now. I'm young, so I haven't been around as long as some of the others who have watched UCSB basketball. And frankly, you guys who have watched the Bears for that long, right? But I'm young, and as long as I've been covering over the last 6, 7, 8 years under the Joe Pasternak era and beyond, there is no player who can finish games the way A.J. Mitchell can when it's tight. If it's a 1 or 2 possession game, this team is really, really good at closing things out. So if the Baylor Bears do not pull away, hey, if it's not a 20 or 15, 20 point lead or more, the Gauchos are in it. Seriously, do not count this team out toward the end of games, especially if they're in the lead. There are a few teams who are able to come back and then steal a win against the Gauchos. That said, they have never played, at least this season, a team of Baylor's prowess.
Max, great stuff. Thank you very much, buddy. We appreciate your time, appreciate your passion. Enjoy the broadcast. I know you will on Friday, early afternoon. At least it will be early afternoon here, 12:30 Central, and of course, 10:30. Well, it'll be in Denver Mountain Time, but for those in Santa Barbara. And the fact that you're in Santa Barbara, we hate you because we know how beautiful it is. We had an analytical guy, by the way, Evan Miyakawa, Miya. He is actually living in Santa Barbara. He's a Baylor grad who does a bunch of basketball analytics. And so 2 guests today are from the Santa Barbara area.
We made kind of an accident. Remember the last time we were in Oxnard, we kind of made an accidental drive up there. We're just
it wasn't accidental.
Well, we didn't have a plan. We
beautiful.
Just said, so we went up there. It was great.
Absolutely gorgeous, yeah. All right. Thanks, Max. We appreciate it. Enjoy the week and possibly longer. We appreciate your time. That's Max Kelton, voice of UC Santa Barbara on the Gauchos. There was a time, and I don't remember what year it was, there was a national analyst. This is back during the time when Baylor was basically not good about anything. And, of course, women's basketball was good for a while. But football was terrible. Men's basketball was trying to come out of the dumps. And Jim Rome called it scrubby little Baylor. He is a UC Santa Barbara alum, in case that has anything to do with this week.
I have never come across a personality who's so well known and seemingly still so popular, and yet I never see him anywhere or hear anything about him except for like maybe once a year. I never see him. I never hear him. I never read him. And I'm not like knocking him, to be very clear. Like, he's been an institution for like 30 years at this point. But I'm just wondering, based on what? Because it's like all from like 1995 or something, because I don't ever see him. It's crazy.
You know, when I started in radio, we had his show on the air in the middays. And he had a promo that he hadn't changed the promos as much as the other, people did. But he had this promo that ran for about 6 weeks. And I thought about it too much, because he would talk about how call-in radio is lazy. Like, you're not prepared.
Like Feinbaum?
Yeah, you'd be like, I'm not really going to prepare anything. Just calls.
Right.
But he would make his callers write out, like he would have people call in and like they would talk smack, and they would write out these just ridiculous, dissertations on things. Yeah. And then I'm like, well, what's the difference, Jim? You're just calling, hey, Ted from Ohio, go. And then Ted from Ohio talks for 4 minutes. what's the difference, man?
Yeah, no.
Drove me nuts. But he was very popular.
He was very much ahead of the curve when it came to national sports radio. But you're right. You don't really see or hear of him. I don't even know where he would be.
He's on like Westwood One, and apparently he makes like millions of dollars a year. But I don't know anybody that listens to him or even knows how to listen to him. I know that like when I was in LA one time, like he was on a regular, like I know he has a show and all that, but it's not carried everywhere like you would imagine, and it's just few and far between, it seems like, actually running into some of his content.
I used to see him like you'd see his show up on Radio Row. Gary, did you see Jim Rome at all when we were on Radio Row? I never even saw. I'm sure he was there.
No,
but
he was. I bet he was.
I'm sure he probably had an exclusive thing. But again, from what? Like that's just the question.
Yeah, there were about 12 to 15 larger setups on the perimeter of Radio Row, and he walks in. He has somebody that's with him. He goes on the air and he walks out. But he used to be everywhere when it comes to radio around the country. Now, again, right now you don't have to be. We are on YouTube. And so, but he was out of L.A. And yeah, again, but you're right. You rarely hear much about him. And Roger the Dodger, haven't heard him in years, and Roger's in California. All right, when we come back, Paul, by the way, at the top of the chat room, that doesn't mean that everybody is in the chat room, but at the top of the chat room, there's the link for you to sign up to pick your bracket. You got plenty of time. The games on what? The play-in games are just play-in games to whoever you're going to pick in the first round against, like Iowa State or whoever else. But you have that, and so we want to keep up with that throughout the tournament. It's always fun. I have not yet done my bracket. I've signed up. Paxton just said, I'm signed up. And so there we go. So hopefully you'll sign up and be a part of that throughout the tournament.
By the way, Dennis Dodd, I don't know if he's just trolling at this point or not, but he did put out sources. The Big 12 continues to speak weekly, and he had weekly in quotes, to expansion candidates. So I don't know if he's just wanting to stir the pot or if that's just the new news he has to pass along. That's the same as the news we've been, seeing reported. But, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he was trolling at this point. But that's your update for today, is that according to Dennis Dodd, the Big 12 continues to speak weekly to expansion candidates. And some people are apt to call him a liar. So he's doubling down, tripling down at this point, and you can take your side on all that. I'm just sitting here taking it all in, and we'll see what happens in the end when everything gets sorted out. But I know there's definitely a part of the audience, not necessarily ours, but just college football in general, that feels like, people like him are just making stuff up. And I maintain, like I said last Friday, like, don't give me the whole just making stuff up. Like, I think that's pretty ridiculous. Now,
yeah, he wants to put 25 years of what he's done on the line by making stuff
to
up.
get some Twitter likes. That makes tons of sense.
Yeah.
No, but, there is some element of just disbelieving anything that's reported. So that's why I say he may be just trolling at this point. But that's the update that he put out there just a few minutes ago. And other than that, it's been just relatively quiet in that regard.
I had those mentioned that one of the tweets that I received from Alex Frank on the comparisons of various categories, offense and defense. Lisa Marie, while I get the weight for competition, I don't know what is the particular model, but it's still hard to compare UC Santa Barbara, where they are, from a practical standpoint because of their schedule.
Yeah, I think
they had no quad one games at all.
Yeah, I think that's where I kind of, I'm not looking, and I was sitting right there when R.J. Hunter just rained threes, and I was sitting right there when Yale out-rebounded Baylor. So I've seen really good Baylor teams go in and lose in the first round inexplicably. But that's the gap I just can't cross in my mind yet.
Yeah, and you were then, Scott Drew texted me and said, we don't want him anywhere near us the rest of life when it comes to the NCAA tournament.
In Jacksonville, I had to stand outside in the rain and talk to you because it was so loud in the arena. And even underneath, like, I couldn't find a room or anything to go into. So I was standing outside. We were talking in the rain, and it was just caller after caller, like this, just angry at Coach Drew. And I was like, all right, you guys got to be careful what you wish for. But, of course, it didn't come to pass. And all those people now were like, oh, I always knew it. I saw it from the beginning. He just had something about him. But, yeah, I mean, that one. And then I think Rhode Island was the weirdest one because it happens like they were the first game that day, and then I go to the press conference, I walk out, there's still like 2 hours before you're even going on the air, And my call was like, well, what do I do now? Like, do I come home? Do I stay here? Like, I can't get a flight out. It's weird. It's Providence, Rhode Island. It's not easy to get here.
Yeah, that's one of the hardest things about covering the tournament, and what made it so easy when I was in Indianapolis, because I could have been there for 2 days and flown back. Or there was a chance, based on how the hotels were set up, which was amazing, I was never going to have to go from Indianapolis to, let's say, Orlando, or from Orlando to Houston, or to Las Vegas. It was all contained. What Indianapolis did that year with COVID was incredible to make that happen, the year after COVID, to make that happen, and it made it easy. But, yeah, Craig had to go up to Kansas City, and COVID hit. It was like 3 years ago. Was it 3 years ago? It was, like a week ago, when all that happened. The KC got shut down, and Craig came back that night and basically wasn't even in Kansas City 24 hours. When we come back, David Hellman, Fox Sports, Garofalo to the Raiders. The Cowboys have restructured Michael Gallup to bring in some more, open up some more money. His thoughts about the trade with the Dolphins, picking up Jalen Ramsey and more. This is 365 Sports. Alan Samuels, Dodge, Chrysler, Jeep, Ram, Fiat, as the courts, of course, with what's happening with the basketball tournament heat up. So are the deals at Ram Truck Month going on at Alan Samuels. New 2022 Ram 1500 Lone Star Crew Cab with values up to $8,000. $8,000. And, wait a minute, $8,250. What is available plus $500 to first responders, and get 1.9% if you want. Other than the $8,250, you get 1.9% for 72 months. Pick from the best selection of brand new inventory coming in every day in Central Texas. Alan Samuels, Dodge, Chrysler, Jeep, Ram, Fiat. Ted Teague, the general manager. Loop 340 east of 84 in Waco.
In our logo and advertising, we say we are people that you can count on. What does that mean? It starts with providing a quality vehicle and quality service at a fair price. But it also means we do what we say we will do, and we treat people fairly with respect. It starts by hiring great people, good local folks who work hard with a caring attitude. Our employees are the real reason we are people that you can count on. Put us to the test and see for yourself that at Richard Carr Motors, we are people you can count on.
TFNB Your Bank for Life is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texas are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB, your bank for life. Member FDIC.
There are 26 letters in the alphabet, over 600,000 words in the dictionary, and just 3 of them said together can change everything. Let's order pizza. Those 3 words lead to dough made from scratch and 3 fresh signature cheeses that blanket golden crust in a heavenly melt on Marco's Pizza that'll blow your mind. So visit marcos.com to order and stop by Marco's Pizza in Belmead, China Spring, Woodway, and in Robinson. Marco's. Pizza lovers get it.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive and North 19th Street, right behind the bank, is a hidden gem in Waco. If you're a fan of bourbon, especially local Texas bourbons, that's where you gotta go. Balcones, TX, Devil's River, whatever it is, they've got it. Riverbend Liquor and Wine, plus the best selection of craft beers in Waco, seasonally churned out throughout the year. Whether it's spring, summer, fall, or winter, Riverbend Liquor and Wine, best selection of craft beers, a speedy drive-through window, and excellent customer service. Find out more on Instagram or just go by and see them. Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street behind the bank.
One size fits all. That may be all right for an adjustable belt or cheap sunglasses, but when it comes to your financial needs, no one wants a one-size-fits-all strategy. Ben Erlinson, your Edward Jones financial advisor, knows that his most important goals are yours. That's why he takes the time to understand your needs, knowing you. That's how Edward Jones makes sense of investing. Ben Erlinson, 100 North 6th Street in Waco, 254-759-8533. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
In Texas, there's pea-size hail and baseball-size hail. Guess which one hit our house? We didn't even know where to begin, but we called our Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent, and he was so reassuring. He knew exactly what to do to get our house back into shape and our lives back to normal. Now, we're even more thankful for the roof over our heads.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Welcome back to 365 Sports. It's time for our weekly segment with David Hellman of FoxSports.com.
It's a time of the year when it's almost like its own season, the early part of free agency. Jimmy G to Las Vegas, Michael Gallup restructured, Jalen Ramsey trade to Miami. David Hellman covers it all. Fox Sports NFL with us on 365 Sports. So let's start with Gallup and him being restructured. I get nervous when I start to see too many of these happen because you get stuck with dead money. But was this something that was already kind of in place when they signed him in the first place?
Yeah, I think that's always part of the idea with the Cowboys is going for a longer deal that allows you to restructure. I don't know why they waited, an extra few days. They obviously could have done this Friday when they did their other restructures, but I think it was always part of the game plan. It hinges on Michael's ACL. I mean, if he comes back stronger in the second year, which people often do, I think it's a non-issue. But if last year was really the sign of just the steep decline that he can't come back from, I agree with you. It's problematic to think about. So obviously, I think you're rooting for a guy's good health anyway, but for a variety of reasons, it's very, very important to the Cowboys, I think, that Michael Gallup comes back healthy this year.
David, if you could only have one, Leighton Vander Esch or Donovan Wilson?
I'm about to say something. I guess this is kind of a controversial take. I mean, I think they're both good players, and I think if the Cowboys could, if you can get one or both of them back on agreeable deals, that's fine. But, I don't really care that much, to be honest with you. I mean, Leighton Vander Esch played well last year. He's a really good player, but, he's getting up there in years. It's already been 5 years since he was drafted. He's had injury issues. He's had chronic injury issues. So I'm always worried about giving a guy with issues like that a long-term deal. Donovan Wilson, again, really good player. I don't mean to disparage the guy, but I think it's easier to find guys with that skill set, which is to say a hard-hitting box safety that can lay the wood in the run game and make disruptive plays. I mean, you're not signing him for his coverage ability. And so I just think, again, Jaron Kearse is evidence of that. I mean, you signed Jaron Kearse to $1 million deal 2 years ago, and now he's playing like one of the best members of your defense. I trust Dan Quinn can find other guys that can do that. They found Marquise Bell in free agency last year. Israel Mukwamu has shown that he can do some of that stuff. So, like I said, if they can find those guys on good numbers that are agreeable for the team, fine. But I'm just really not sitting here sweating whether or not the Cowboys can get those guys back.
I am to the point, David, and where I agree with you on that. But if the Cowboys are going to spend in free agency, I would rather them spend for someone who maybe helps them get over the top. Because right at this point, as opposed to, I know you got to fill up your roster and make sure you've got starters penciled in most everywhere, but I think they've been so conservative when it comes to it, free agency and the offseason lately, that it's been so long. Why not roll the dice and see if it works? What is it like? The cap and long term and blah blah blah. It's been 20 some odd years since they've been there. So maybe do it like the Rams did it. Get your Super Bowl and deal with the aftermath later.
I don't have a problem with that. I really don't. I mean, yeah, that's. People are kind of poking fun at the Rams as if they did something stupid, and I'm like, they played in 2 Super Bowls in 5 years. What are we talking about? I don't say this to be combative, but do you have a name in mind? Do you have somebody in mind who you think the Cowboys could go out and get that would make a huge difference?
Oh, I probably don't have a name in mind. I would just rather if there is a big name available, like is something they could go get, I would rather see them put resources towards that. But
sure,
you can.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you on that.
I'm not
And
I'm not an OBJ guy at this point. Like I think that's kind of. I think Jerry likes. He's in love with the idea of OBJ, but maybe not OBJ himself.
Yeah, I mean, it pains me to say as an LSU guy, I'm not overly interested myself. I think, and the reason I say that is especially at 5 o'clock on Monday, the vast majority of the really, really big names are already gone. That's kind of the way this has worked since the legal tampering period became a thing. Is I think like 14 or 15 of the top 20 free agents have agreed to deals with new teams. My thing is, if I were the Cowboys, which I'm not, and they never listen to me, they never have. I assume they never will. I would maintain the same strategy in free agency that they've had, which is try to bring a guy or two back on a nice deal for the team, like Donovan Wilson or Leighton Vander Esch, maybe Jonathan Hankins. Same old boring stuff in free agency, but where I think they could really make some hay is in the trade market. And that's something that we've seen a lot of teams do with big results. And I think there are some guys available that way that intrigue me a hell of a lot more than whatever's out there on the open market right now. Like if you could swing a trade for DeAndre Hopkins, or even, if he's a little bit too old for you, the rumor going around right now is that Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy, the Denver receivers, are available right now. That is a hell of a lot more interesting to me than some of these names in free agency. Now, do the Cowboys see it that way? I have no idea. I would lean toward no, but I don't think you can help but notice. I think there's a market inefficiency right now in the NFL where, some teams have kind of started to realize that maybe draft picks aren't quite as valuable as we used to think they were. The Rams are one of them. They've just been sending picks away for years, and you can talk trash about where they are right now, but they built some fantastic teams by giving away draft picks for other teams' players. So that is more the line of where I would like to see the Cowboys explore is, who's out there that we could get for a second or a third round pick that would make our team a heck of a lot better. And I bet you that there's a pretty long list of them.
David, the Cowboys' philosophy is to not reach on free agents. It doesn't mean they hit on all of them, but for the most part, they're trying to be frugal. And also make sure they don't screw up, put themselves in cap hell. And yet, they're restructuring Zach Martin, they're restructuring Dak, and they're now doing even Michael Gallup. So isn't that everyone going to be near cap hell anyway?
I think, yeah. To answer your question, if you have a good team, then you are paying players a lot of money, whether that's because you have a quarterback. Obviously, the Cowboys have a handful of really, really enormous contracts, whether it's Dak, whether it's DeMarcus Lawrence, whether it's Zach Martin. And obviously they also have to keep Trayvon Diggs and CeeDee Lamb and Micah Parsons in mind. All those guys are going to need money very, very soon, some sooner than others. You can't be good in the NFL without being close to the cap unless you just really hit the perfect storm of circumstances, like finding Russell Wilson as a rookie to be your starter as a third-round pick, stuff like that. And without, obviously we give the Cowboys a ton of grief about their inability to capitalize on Dak, but a big part of that was that they were still paying Tony Romo. So you need a lot of stuff to go your way to not be close to the cap. And again, we've seen time and time again, smart teams can wriggle their way out of this stuff on a regular basis. That's, the Rams have done it multiple times. This is already the second time they're rebuilding their roster under Sean McVay. The Saints managed to wriggle out of it. They're now paying Derek Carr a huge contract despite being up against the cap for the second half of Drew Brees' career. And that's, I think that's where the people kind of have the catchphrase that the cap is a myth. I don't think the cap is a myth. But there's always a way to kind of wriggle around it and make it work for you if you're willing to do that. I think more often than not, the Cowboys just don't want to deal with that headache if they don't have to.
Yeah, David, going back to the trade market, they are, and they should feel like they're pretty close. The last couple of years, how their season has ended to being something bigger. Do you think that the past deals, Amari Cooper, which worked out I would say, pretty well for them in spite of the fact that they didn't, make deep runs in the playoffs. It certainly changed, their outlook when they had him on the roster. Roy Williams and guys like that still scare the Jones family off a little bit of really getting aggressive when it comes to that?
I mean, I really hope not. Joey Galloway is 2 lifetimes ago in the NFL. The Amari Cooper deal was that, the Amari Cooper deal is one of the smarter things that they've done in recent memory. They gave up a first-round pick. It turned out to be well worth it. And then even his contract, he wound up being a bargain by the time they traded him. I mean, go look at receiver salaries in the NFL right now. Amari's not even close to the top anymore. And they front-loaded the contract so that he was out of guarantees so that getting rid of him didn't really even cost them any money. It was a really, really good deal for a guy that gave you, Pro Bowl caliber play for 3 years. So I hope they're not scarred by it. But I guess only they know the answer to that for sure. And since Brandon Carr in 2012, they haven't given out anything resembling a flashy contract to a guy that wasn't already in the building when the offseason started. So, there's a lot that can be said about their reluctance to do it. I don't know if you can pinpoint one answer, but I think that they're big on seeing proof of production. They don't want to be burned that, oh, well, it turns out this guy's only good in a different system and he's not going to work in our system. I think they feel much more comfortable with guys that they've already had their hands on. And honestly, I say it every year, I don't want the Cowboys to be the team that spends $200 million on the first day of free agency. I think by and large, that's not where you want to be. I do think the draft is the right way to build a team, but what we've seen time and time again is that it's not enough. In a league where a third of the roster turns over every year, you're never going to hit on enough draft picks consistently enough that is the only way to keep your team populated with talent. You've got to be willing to swing trades. You got to be willing to spend a little bit of outside money. Doesn't have to be all of your resources, but you can't find me a team that's won the Super Bowl in the last decade without being willing to take some risks outside of their own roster. And for whatever reason, the Cowboys just haven't been willing to do that.
Speaking of risk-taking, David, what were your thoughts on Carolina jumping up for the number 1 overall pick?
Man, it's terrifying when you're talking about those types of resources, and it's funny. I think there's a funny disconnect in the way that people look at this stuff, people on the inside of an organization versus people on, people like us, people that are just watching from the outside, where you and I say, well, 5 of these guys get drafted high every year and maybe 1 or 2 of them work out. It's such a crapshoot to base that many assets on an unknown commodity. But on the inside, these are professional scouts and coaches who are watching a boatload of tape who feel in their bones that they're right. Obviously, that doesn't mean that they are, but I just think they have a much different approach about it. It really struck me when I first realized, I say this all the time, it's, people on the outside might look at the draft and be like, okay, there's any number of 32 guys that you could pick in the first round. And really, for each specific team, it's like a handful, they're only ever considering a much smaller number of guys. They don't even like some players that we spend so much time talking about. So I would assume the Panthers are going to draft C.J. Stroud or Bryce Young. I think they're both awesome. I think they'll both probably be good players, but it's not a risk that I would want to take, not for that type of assets. And to give up a known commodity like DJ Moore, who I think is one of the more underrated players in the league. I think I said it last week when y'all were asking me about Anthony Richardson. I'm glad it's not my job security that's on the line with these decisions. But hey, more to the victors go the spoils. The Chiefs look like geniuses for trading up for Mahomes. So maybe the Panthers will be the toast of the NFL 5 years from now because of this.
Thoughts on Jimmy G and the Raiders?
I think Jimmy Garoppolo is a good enough quarterback. I think Jimmy Garoppolo is like the Mendoza line for good quarterback play.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Jimmy Garoppolo is like the line. You can win with him. He's not going to do anything special for you. So if you build the rest of the team around him, and the Raiders didn't give him crazy money by quarterback standards, if you do a great job of building everything around him, I think it's great. But the 49ers have kind of learned a lesson the hard way of you can have an all-pro at like every position, and if your quarterback's not good enough or if your quarterback's not healthy, and Jimmy Garoppolo hasn't been healthy for a lot of his career, it can come back to bite you. So, I mean, if they play the rest of their cards the right way, I think they can be competitive with him, but it just doesn't seem like a long-term solution to me. And I think that's why Davante Adams sounded frustrated on his Instagram today, would be my guess, is, you know, this is an aging receiver with only so many more opportunities to contend for a Super Bowl. And I don't know. To me, signing Jimmy Garoppolo just doesn't sound like something that's going to put you in that conversation anytime soon, especially when you share a division with the Chiefs.
It was an overly practical move, right? Because they're picking 7th. We just talked about, you know, the Panthers trading up. So 3 of those first 4 picks are probably going to be quarterbacks unless one of the teams just decides they don't like, you know, who has ever left. So the likelihood of them at 7 getting the 4th quarterback without trading up, and maybe they don't have that opportunity, would probably put them behind the 8 ball. So for once, the Raiders made a very practical, boring move, but that's not really what they need to do when they've got Davante Adams out there.
It's a wonderful point. You're right. It's a level of practicality that we don't often associate with the Raiders. And I mean, I think, again, with the money you save and the assets that you have by not doing something crazy like what the Panthers just did, in theory, the Raiders should be able to put a very complete team around Jimmy Garoppolo, and maybe not right away, but, you know, next year or the year after that, you could put a very solid team around him. But yeah, I think you can't forget the human element either, where a guy like Davante Adams is like, whoa, I'm not here to be part of a 9-win team. I thought we were, you know, making a push for this thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then that raises fascinating ideas too of, well, you just dealt for Davante Adams. Maybe you could deal him again. And I think I love stuff like that because it kind of informs you of what an organization thinks of itself. You know, if the Raiders turn around and are trying to deal Davante Adams, I think that tells you of how far away they think they are. But shoot, maybe depending on what happens in the draft, depending on how the rest of free agency shakes out, maybe they think they can make a run at it. Like I said, I don't really see that, but we're wrong about a lot of stuff. I mean, the Seattle Seahawks made the playoffs this year, so who the hell knows?
David, thank you very much. Appreciate your time, as always, on Mondays at 5:30 to kind of look back at what the in-season, the games, and even a Monday night game, but also now the free agency tampering has begun, free agency this week. And I read an article, I believe it was late yesterday evening, about really, if you look at, there is no rhyme and reason when it comes to free agency. I remember there's certain teams that have just gone all in and just busted themselves. Washington tried to do it. Albert Haynesworth was an absolute bust among other players, and they just, you know, again, it's why it's been 20. Cowboys have been in a drought. The Redskins have been in an even longer drought. It's just hard. And I think the trades, the subtle pickups of free agents once the market is set is always a better way to go. All right.
Yeah, I think the Cowboys don't need it. Like, there's nobody on the market that's going to make, like, oh, man, that's going to really put them over the top. But there's some people that are not technically on the market but could be available. Like, if, you know, look, if Davante Adams was available and the Cowboys were interested in that, I would say go get him. And you have Davante and CeeDee Lamb, and then you don't have to worry about wide receiver in the draft, and you can make the run at it because they're losing the window on a lot of their guys. I mean, Zeke's window is already probably closed. Even if they figure out, and I still don't think that they will, but so you lost the window on Zeke. You might have lost it on Tony Pollard, too, if he doesn't respond all that well. And it looks like you might be losing your window on Dak, too. So
the only window they need to worry about, Paul, is Jerry's window.
Yeah.
That's the one that's closing as fast as any of them. And, like, that's the one they want to keep open as long as possible. But, I mean, you're right. But they've, you know, it was the Tony Romo window. It was the Troy Aikman window. It was the Quincy Carter window. It was the, you know, I mean, there's been a lot of windows that have opened and closed and thrown rocks through them and repaired them and done all that. But, I mean, we're at the point now where this is Jerry's window. And he doesn't have a guarantee to keep that thing open much longer than he's already kept it open. So no matter who the quarterback is, you better get it done now. because I think we've blown a decade past the beginning talks of like, well, you know, Jerry's getting old. I mean, we're like so far past Jerry being old at this point.
80s.
Yeah, I mean, legitimately, there's only so much room left to go, and I don't mean to be morbid, but it's reality. Like, he's not going to be a 97-year-old NFL owner out there still, hey, everybody, what's going on in Oxnard? Like, that's just not realistic. So, you know, I think he feels that as much as anybody, and they're going to do whatever they can. But, yeah, that's the window that I'm eyeing is that Jerry window.
I'll tell you what, even with that being said, that they don't want to go, like, all in on a couple of different things that might bust, says quite a bit about their patience and discipline, even if it frustrates the fan base. All right, when we come back, Paul Catalina's top 5 to wrap up this Monday, March the 13th. This is 365 Sports. New week, Waco Custom Marketplace, new specials. Select and choice brisket, $3.20 a pound or $3.50 a pound. Prime brisket, $4.25 a pound. Pork steak, $1.99 a pound. Bacon ends and pieces, $2.75 a pound. And boneless chicken thighs are just $1.50 a pound. Raw Italian sausage is $3.25 a pound. And boudin, some of you on the chat love it, $2.99 a pound. And then, of course, the live crawfish, which fluctuates every week. Last week, $3.50 a pound. Started out like $4.50 a pound for 30-pound sacks of live crawfish. Order by Wednesday when they close their doors at 6. Pick up anytime after Friday at 4 or on Saturday during store hours. Waco Custom Marketplace, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco.
I hate my job, but I don't mind getting up in the morning. I dread each day, but I can't wait to get out of bed. You ask me why, and what I'll say to you is true. Well, you can get breakfast tacos at Rudy's Barbecue. Scrambled eggs and brisket, they ain't fooling around. Salsa drap, son, they're the best in town. Barbecue for breakfast, yes, it's true. Put a smile on your morning at Rudy's Barbecue. Next in line.
Three Nations Brewing Company has 16 different beers on draft with a new beer every Friday. It also offers 2 air-conditioned tap rooms, a large indoor beer hall, a second-floor mezzanine offering a great overview of the brewing company and equipment and patio where you can relax under the shade. Plus, you can now experience the new Three Nations Beer Garden Grill on our shaded patio. Grab a cold beer and enjoy a bite from our freshly prepared and delicious menu. Street tacos, quesadillas, freshly cooked burgers and dogs, and veggie burgers too. Nachos and so much more, all prepared and cooked on site. So come visit the award-winning Three Nations Brewing Company on East Vandergrift off I-35 in Carrollton.
TFNB Your Bank for Life is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texas are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB, your bank for life. Member FDIC.
Shorty's Pizza Shack at 12th and Bagby is a homegrown, locally owned pizza place that's out of this world. Everything from the dough, the sauce, the sausage topping is made fresh in-house. Not to mention the amazing pizza pillows, the chicken wings are to die for. Try the Sikkim sauce, chili cheese fries or tots, plus great specials on food and drink every single day. Shorty's is also the perfect spot to watch the game with your friends. Shorty's Pizza Shack at 12th and Bagby. Tell them Paul sent you by.
Boozers is the wedding ring store and more. If you're ready to get engaged or already married and want to upgrade your wife's ring for a special anniversary, Boozers is the place to go. With the largest selection of premier quality diamond engagement rings and wedding rings in Central Texas. They have 7 cases with over 300 styles of rings from top designers like Natalie Kay. Choose from yellow, white, or rose gold, plus beautiful top quality loose diamonds. With an in-house jewelry, they can also custom make anything you want. Bring in a picture or drawing and let Boozers create your one-of-a-kind pendant or ring. They can even use some of your old gold and diamond jewelry to create something new. At Boozers, you'll find a great selection of quality timepieces, and Boozers is the place for expert watch maintenance and repairs too. They specialize in expert Rolex watch repair for fine jewelry, watches, custom work, and more. Go to Boozers on Valley Mills and Lake Air Drive in Waco.
Boozers, the wedding ring store and more.
This Is Paul Catalina's top 5 at 5:45? Or is it 5:55? Either way, it's the top 5.
Welcome back. 365 Sports, top 5 bracket observations. Number 5. They did not change much from 3 weeks ago. They put that bracket out. They kind of kept everybody where they were. It didn't, especially at the top. For those top seeds, it didn't much matter what happened the last couple weeks. Now, granted, there was some flux in there and different things happened, but, I mean, they kind of knew where this was headed when they put that one out. And so, in the future, let's all look to that one much, much more because – look, if they know 3 weeks out what they're going to do, which they should because it's a very arduous task. Like, we know how long and how much they have to wrestle with getting 4 teams in a football playoff. This is 68 teams in a college basketball playoff. So that 3 weeks, I mean, pay attention to that more because, look, again, that did not, aside from like teams like Baylor going from the 2 to the 3 line based on the way they closed, it's almost pretty much as it was, outside of the undetermined, like what's going to happen for the one bid leagues. They know pretty much what's going to go.
Unlike football.
Yeah.
Where it's like a soap opera. They pretty much stuck to it. Now, there could be arguments that they shouldn't have, but people just moved from being a part of a 1 seed, 2 seed. There was very little movement. Some of it was like, where were you among the seeds? Like, obviously, Houston did really well by hanging on to be the overall number 1 seed. A lot of people thought it would be Kansas until Texas hammered them.
Number 4, they're not as impressed with the Big 12. Now, look, the Big 12 got 70% of their teams in. They got 7 out of the 10. Oklahoma State left out, which would have made 80% of the team. So, yes, I get that. But they were not impressed with quad 1 wins versus, Kansas versus Houston and in seeding them. They kind of felt that out. Now, be that as it may, that's kind of how it wound up. And Kansas winds up not going to Kansas City, which would have been a gigantic advantage for them as they try for their title defense. So that happened. I guess you can't really complain about a lot of it because, you've got three seeds or, whatever it is,
You talking about the Big 12?
Yeah. So
1-1, 2 2s, and 1-3.
Yeah. So, 1-1, 2 2s, and 1-3. So they're impressed, but maybe not as much as like the Big 12 would want it to be, particularly Kansas, or Baylor was probably hoping to, that their late season couple losses to Iowa State wouldn't matter as much as they did, but they did. And, here they are on the 3 line playing a team that a very confident 14 rolling through, especially from what we heard from Max just now.
Yeah, I guess they didn't get that Big 12 propaganda in the committee room. They missed out on that. It was all focused on football.
Yeah. Yeah. Where was all the Dennis Dodd articles there?
Yeah.
Number 3, how you close mattered. I mean, it certainly did for Baylor. It certainly did for Kansas, I think. And I think it did for several teams. So where you wound up, kind of reflected how you closed. Now, granted, Houston did not win the AAC, and they still kind of stayed where they were, but or they didn't win the AAC tournament, but were without their best player. So that certainly went into regard. But, yeah, how you closed mattered. And look, ask North Carolina, who just needed to get 2 more wins in the ACC.
Yeah.
Didn't do it. And not in the tournament after being in the title game and being minutes away, 2 minutes away from winning the thing. They were 2 minutes away from winning the title last year, and now they're not in the tournament. So, of course, it wasn't just how they closed; it's how they started their conference season. We're terrible in that. Number 2, a losing record versus quad 1 is more important than total quad 1 wins because you look at the Oklahoma State and you look at UNC. Those really killed them overall. And then total quad 1 wins, yeah, it's great to have them, but I think when it starts comparing to everybody else, if you've got 9 and somebody else has 17, but they played a better conference than you, then eventually you've got to start splitting hairs somewhere. But your losing record versus quad 1 really, really seemed to affect the committee's decisions this year.
I mean, yeah, as it should. If you had a losing record, I mean, that needs to be taken into account, especially when you're comparing it to other teams that don't have a losing record. So, I mean, yeah, if that costs you, that's that's all on you.
Yeah, and I think but the juxtaposition of I wonder how this affects next year. Do you schedule as many quad one games if the wins didn't matter as much this year, right?
Okay, I see what you're saying now.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I got that backwards. Now I see what you mean. Yeah, I have no idea on what you schedule teams that you might lose to because it just matters who you play. That just seems backwards to me. I mean, I don't know. There's something to that. I mean, as far as playing a tough schedule, but playing tough schedule and losing games to tough teams versus beating teams, I can see an argument there. But that's I don't know about that conversation and how they address that moving forward.
Yeah. And number one, at least to me, they're not any runaway favorites in this thing. I think that Alabama's probably going to be the scariest team, and they probably have, based on the net, they have the easiest path. But you look around the brackets, and there's just landmines for everybody at the top. So I think we're seeing a time where, just 2 years ago, you saw it was Baylor and Gonzaga headed down the tracks at each other.
Yep.
And then just a year later after that, and now the second year, it is totally wide open. And a lot of that has to do with the transfer portal being as wide open and more so than it was before, and the fact that nobody's waiting a year and all that. It's certainly changed things, but this thing is as wide open as you can possibly imagine.
Yeah, the Baylor Gonzaga, there were a couple of roadblocks, but they were headed towards what was a collision course, and especially after they didn't play that game in December, which might have been the best thing for Baylor because they couldn't unleash then because they might have, and heck, Gonzaga could have won that game when they were going to play in a tournament. All right, thank you, Paul. Couple of notes. Here's video from Kansas City. Remember what Brett Yormark did? Now, some media members not happy about the setup, but here was video of this is Shaquille O'Neal performing, or DJ Diesel. Look at that place. That's that down, about a 10-minute walk from the arena?
I wish I would have saved this tweet.
Yeah.
A 10-minute walk. It's about a 10-second walk.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah, it's right. As you walk out, you just walk right into it. Yeah, it's.
Well, it depends on what hotel you're at.
From the arena. Yeah, from the arena, it's really close. From the hotel, yeah, it's.
So that place was packed. What were you saying, Craig?
Yeah, somebody had said that they had made the tickets free. I guess they announced that, whereas they were charging for them or something, and they were like, "Oh, I guess they didn't sell enough tickets." So now they're saying it's for free, and good luck getting any fans because Kansas had lost. So like, oh, Kansas is just going to go home, and so I guess you're just going to have Texas fans, and that's it. And well, it turned out pretty okay. Whoever who was thinking that was going to be a negative that they had suddenly announced that you could have free admission. Looks like it was a brilliant choice because whatever they did resulted in a packed house, it looks like.
Well,
absolutely.
One, I can tell you that the students and the Kansas fans will just walk right out of the arena and go there. Why not? It's 8:30 at night when you're walking out. You're not going. I mean, you're not necessarily going home if you already plan to stay in town for the evening. Two, I'll tell you this about Iowa State fans and Kansas State fans in particular. If they decided to come in for the weekend, they're coming in for the weekend.
Yep.
So when they lose, they will sell their tickets and then they will spend all that money on beer. So that had a lot to do with that.
Well, it's good to see that video. Congratulations, the Big 12. Yes, I saw a letter from the U.S. What is it? The USWA or B, whatever the National Basketball Writers Association filed a complaint about the setup. And I wasn't there, so I don't know, but I was told it was very much up in the press box or nosebleed section. And we've seen those seats before when we've covered some NCAA tournaments, and yet we've also been right there on the floor. Garrett, Ross, thank you. Jack McKenzie, thank you. Our sponsors, appreciate you. The chat room today, right off the top, appreciate it from as soon as we put it up. You're there. We appreciate that throughout the show and all the discussion. Thanks again to all of our guests from today. Sports Tonight, 10:30 on the CW tonight, and we'll have a condensed version of what we had today for you. Paul Catalina, Craig Smoak, I'm David Smoak. Thank you very much. Have a great evening. This is 365 Sports.